The Seventh Saga is a turn-based JRPG that was developed by Produce and published by Enix for the Super Nintendo in 1993. Upon starting a new game, you're able to choose 1 out of 7 characters, or apprentices. They all have unique stats and characteristics, which is cool because this adds incentive for repeat playthroughs. When the game begins, the king explains that he's recruited all 7 apprentices to search for the runes, and each apprentice also has their own reasons for acquiring said runes. Once you exit the first town, you'll probably realize that this game is, too hard. Unfortunately, this is what makes most gamers give up rather quickly. I will say that I don't think this game is as hard as people think. It is, however, very grind heavy. At any point in the game, as long as you're the proper level, you shouldn't have a problem. It's just that there are many times where you'll need to put the story on hold and just grind outside a village. When on the world map or in dungeons, you'll have access to the Crystal Ball. This acts as a sort of mini-map and shows where towns and caves are located, as well as treasure chests and enemies. So because you can see where the enemies are, it's not technically random encounters, although avoiding them completely seems impossible. The combat in the Seventh Saga is pretty standard stuff that you've seen before. You can attack, defend, use magic and items, and run away. One thing that's not made clear is that you pretty much always want to defend first before you attack. By doing this, not only will you take less damage, but for your next attack you'll do more damage. This is the key to not getting slaughtered immediately. The gameplay is made up of visiting towns, buying items, weapons, armor, and talking to NPCs, you know, pretty much all the usual stuff. The townsfolk will give you story exposition and tell you about their problems, henceforth directing you to your next objective. Throughout the game, you'll come across the other 6 apprentices. Sometimes they want to fight you for your runes, and other times you're able to recruit them into your party. The other apprentices happen to be some of the toughest opponents in the game. This is because they're always 5 levels above you, so grinding won't help you against them. If you lose to an apprentice, they'll take any runes you have, so make sure to save beforehand, and if you die, reset the game. I also want to mention that I like the music here. It's not the best I've heard, but it's still pretty good. For a lot of gamers, the point of contention is the difficulty. For me though, it's actually how bland this game is, aesthetically and gameplay-wise. Visually speaking, there's not much variety. The overworld is just a large, barren desert with nothing to really find or do other than to walk to the next village, cave, or castle. Speaking of which, the villages, caves, and castles all look the same. I mean, there's a few different village types, but otherwise it's all the same. There are minor exceptions, like much later in the game you'll head north to a snowy, barren wasteland, and the villages and caves fit the snowy motif as well. When it comes to the gameplay, yep, it's a turn-based JRPG alright. Like I said earlier, it's pretty standard stuff. It's not bad, but because this game is so grind heavy, you'll need to do a lot of fighting. And just like the rest of the game, it's pretty dull. When in the villages, caves, and castles, you may explore your environments and possibly find treasure chests or hidden items. But that's it. The caves and castles are mostly empty besides the occasional chest. The Seventh Saga is very linear with no side quests to speak of. And that's really my big beef with this game. The combat and visuals are dull and there's not much in terms of exploration. It's really not that hard of a game. It just requires that you grind. A lot, which requires patience. Overall, I give the Seventh Saga a 6 out of 10. Now, I actually fucking beat this game, and I beat it this morning right before I started filming for my video here. I've attempted to beat it many times throughout my life, but ultimately I do just get bored of it. It's just bland and not really all that fun. I'm glad that I can finally put this game down for good and cross it off my bucket list. I don't think I'll ever play it again, and I would only recommend it to RPG enthusiasts. Guys, thank you again so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next week. Aero the Acrobat was developed by Iguana Entertainment and published by Sunsoft, and let me tell you, they did a great job at making a shit game. I was actually really looking forward to reviewing this game. When I was a kid, my next door neighbor lent this game to me, and I remember playing it and having fun. Funny how things change when you grow up. Aero the Acrobat is a single-player 2D action platformer which looks bad, sounds bad, controls bad, has bad pacing, and is too hard. Listen, I like a good challenge, but when the challenge is made up of poor controls, bad level design, and garnished with a lack of fun, what you get is a question, and the question is why should I play this? And the answer is you should not. Aero the Acrobat looks bad, yes, but I have seen worse. I think Aero himself looks good, but everything else is just bland. I know we're in a circus tent here, but man, all these levels just feel too similar and put me to fucking sleep. I like the music of the first stage, and that's it. The rest of the tracks are forgettable, to me at least. The controls and level design together in this game are a major problem. A good game will have well laid out levels that complement your abilities. In this game, it's exactly the opposite. Starting off, if you walk in any direction, Aero will start to build momentum and can potentially run quite fast. Except you're likely to run into an enemy or touch spikes, which by the way kill you in one shot. So often, enemies would suddenly appear and I would collide with them. So to avoid taking damage or dying, you need to take it slow. But sometimes enemies are just placed in bad areas that even when going slow, you'll have an accident. So mix that with a plethora of spike traps and what you get is a game that's too hard for the wrong reason. Check this joke out. Nice, eh? Assholes. So how do you take out enemies? Well, you have two attacks. If you have stars, pressing Y will make Aero shoot one. Also, if you jump and press B while in the air, you'll make Aero dive. But he only dives diagonally, so taking out enemies with this can be awkward as it's easy to dive in the wrong direction. Each stage has a different objective which you must complete in order to beat the level. Some examples are find the star platforms, find the key and rescue your girl, jump through magic hoops, among many others. This sounds cool, but in this game, it just sucks. By the second stage, I'm just trying desperately to make it to the end without dying too much, so it's really annoying when you've missed something and have to backtrack throughout the level. I think these objectives should have been optional. During my capture session, I played this game twice and I'll show you how far I made it. I wasted all my lives on this part here. This. If you fall, you die. And look how fucking bullshit it is. You have to keep jumping and grabbing these, and it's way harder than it looks. First time through, I fell, but I collected this power-up which allows you to fly for a limited time. That's awesome. So I fly on by, and then I died. Okay, whatever, I'll just collect that power-up again. Fuck, they're all gone. So now I have to do it the hard way. And it is hard. One misstep and you're dead. And that's what happened. I just died repeatedly. I wasted all my lives on this one spot. We're only 5 levels in, although these levels are long and absolutely not fun. Ah, game over. No problem. I still have 2 continues. Act 1? I was on Act 5 and it took me like a fucking half an hour to get there. I had 2 continues left. What the fuck? So that's when I gave up. I did, however, use a level select cheat just to see the rest of the game. When you're on the start menu, press down A, down Y, down A, down Y. You'll hear a tone. Then, while you're in a stage, pause and press up X, down B, left Y, right A, L, and R. Then press select. You'll move on to the next level. Even this cheat is annoying. You'll skip each stage one by one. What if I want the final stage? You gotta go through them all. Luckily for the rest of the game, you just have to press start and then select to move on to the next level. Ah, so it turns out we were on level 1, Act 5. So if you get a game over, you go back to the beginning of the level, so Act 1. How fucking stupid is that? Why can't my continue just take me right back to the act I was on? Wow, turns out there are quite a few different locations and they don't look too bad. After the circus, we have a fun park, the woods, and a museum. The rest of the stages look a little nicer than all the bland circus stages. We even have new objectives like ride the roller coaster and find the exit. So yeah, this game is terribly paced. Why start the game off with 5 long, bland, boring circus levels? Why not just 1 or 2 circus levels, then move on to something different? Better yet, just skip this game altogether. Like I said, I was really looking forward to jumping into this, so it's a shame that it sucks so bad. I give Aero the Acrobat a 3 out of 10. I've never played Aero the Acrobat 2, but I've heard it's quite the step up from the first game. Maybe one day I'll review it. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Do any of you like this game? Please like, please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Aero the Acrobat 2, like the first game, is an action platformer. You control Aero through 7 levels, all with 3 acts, except the final stage, which only has 1 act. I guess first I'll point out the improvements over the original. Number 1, the controls. Aero moves much better, he's not so jerky. He also has a few new moves like the ability to slide and dive downwards. Number 2, the levels, though not perfect, are much better constructed. Number 3, spikes don't one-shot kill you. Number 4, if you're on, say, level 1 Act 3 and to get a game over, if you continue, you start on level 1 Act 3. No more going back to Act 1. Number 5. The levels no longer have silly objectives that you must complete in order to beat the stage. Here, you just have to get to the end. Number 6. We have passwords. You won't have to beat this in one sitting. So those are some welcomed improvements, but how does the game stand on its own? Well, it's easier than the first game, possibly because there's not so many one-hit kill traps, and also how you're able to continue from the act you're on. I was actually able to beat this game. The levels are big and are packed full of secrets. Each level has 4 letters that spell out Aero, and if you collect them all, you get to play a bonus minigame to win extra lives. Occasionally, you'll stumble across power-ups like the ability to fly for a limited time or to air dive twice. There's even a collectible token that, upon completing a stage, allows you to play a bonus act. I mentioned that Aero has a few new moves, the slide and the downward dive. Both are fine, but I barely use them. I only use the downward dive during one boss fight and to get a couple 1-ups. The slide I used a few times to access certain areas. Aero the Acrobat 2 starts out really strong. The first 2 levels are lots of fun. The Bell Castle is the first stage, and it's easy enough to practice the controls and use them to kill enemies and explore. There are 3 acts, and although they're fundamentally the same, I appreciate that the backgrounds and music change. This helps to make them feel different, and thankfully this applies to most levels in the game. The music, by the way, is okay. It's nothing special, although I do really like Act 3 of the Bell Castle. Stage 2 is the Borden Zone, in which you snowboard through the auto-scrolling mountains while jumping off ramps and avoiding obstacles. Kind of reminds me of that level in Yoshi's Island. I think it's great that they changed up the gameplay and kept it fun. Stage 3 is similar to Stage 1. This level is fine, but all 3 acts kind of feel like they drag a little bit. Plus the enemies are kind of annoying. These guys, for example, who jump out and surprise you. Stage 4 is Disco Fever. Now, this is where the game really starts to go downhill. Of all the stages in the game, this one seems to have the least effort put in. We have a disco theme, okay, fine. So how do we make a music stage? Well, let's put in random musical items like music notes, hi-hats, disco stew, lots of disco stew, metronomes, compact discs, wait, CDs? Wasn't disco popular in like the late 60s and 70s? You know, when we had vinyl records? Look at the background. Is that their version of a strobe light? Look, I like music. I love music, in fact, but this is just so generic. I expect this type of level from Wayne's World, but not here. Stage 5 is a factory. These acts are confusing and really drag on. Otherwise, it's just more of the same shit, just in a factory. Stage 6 is where the game starts to get better again. The Performer's Dungeon is a little more straightforward, where you have to make new paths by activating switches. It's pretty tough though, I burned through quite a few lives. The final stage takes place on an auto-scrolling train where you basically just have to make it to the engine and defeat Ector. This level can be tough, but they offer frequent 1-ups. So those are the levels at a glance. The first 2 levels are the most fun, Disco Fever and the Factory are the worst, and the other levels are just okay. So, there you have it. Is Aero the Acrobat 2 an improvement over the first game? Absolutely. It's not a bad game, but it's also not a great game, and that's why I give Aero the Acrobat 2 a 6 out of 10. Now let's talk about how rare this game is. Now I don't exactly know how rare it is, but I've never seen it in the wild, and when I did my review for the first Aero the Acrobat, I looked on eBay for the second game and couldn't find it. There wasn't a single listing. There was a listing recently and I bought it for a lot of money, and I don't recommend it, by the way, spending as much as I did, but I don't know. This game seems to be pretty rare. Do you own it? Do you have it? What do you think of it? Do you like it? Guys, I want to thank you so much again for watching. Please hit like, please subscribe, and I'll see you next week.
Aladdin was developed and published by Capcom and released for Super Nintendo in 1993. I'm sure you know this already, but this is not at all the same game that was released for the Sega Genesis, despite having the same name and very similar cover art. The story is, of course, the same as the movie it's based on. You take on the role of Aladdin as you bounce and swing through 7 well-crafted stages. All the levels look great and are taken straight from the movie. At least I'm pretty sure they're from the movie. I mean, I haven't seen the film in like 27 years. And now that I think about it, the genie stages might have been pulled right from the developer's asshole, so I really don't know. The stages don't take too long to complete, but they're big enough that if you're not paying close enough attention, you could miss certain collectibles. I think this sort of level design is great because it encourages exploration and increases replay value. Not only that, but I think it's fun to take it slow while searching the levels. Enemy placement and level structure is good with no major hiccups. The gameplay is mostly made up of swinging, jumping, and bouncing off of various enemies or objects objects, and the level design supports these mechanics perfectly. The controls for these mechanics are tight and responsive. You can change the controls in the options menu, although I found it odd that there are no options to change the difficulty, but I digress. Jumping, bouncing, swinging, and gliding are the majority of what you'll be doing here, and thankfully it feels great and is quite satisfying once you get the hang of it. You attack mainly by jumping straight on enemies, but you can also throw apples, although the apples only stun most enemies. I'd say the most challenging aspect of Aladdin is the platforming. Some of these jumps can be real tricky. Not unfair though, just tricky. There's a part in the genie stage where you need to jump across platforms that the genie makes for you. When you jump on certain platforms or objects, Aladdin will bounce right off. Like I said, it can take some getting used to, but once you do, it's actually pretty fun. There are quite a few different items you'll find throughout the game. The item you'll encounter most often are green gems. If you collect 100, you'll earn a new heart container, which is a permanent health upgrade. On top of that, you can also find standalone heart containers which do the same thing. Red gems are much less frequent, but the amount you collect will determine which ending you'll get. Food items restore health, except apples, those you throw at enemies. Golden scarabs allow you to play a bonus minigame at the end of a stage. Lamps give you 1-ups, and the sheet allows you to slowly descend to the ground while airborne. It's kind of like the cape in Super Mario World. Although the sheet is not technically a permanent upgrade, you do hang on to it until you get a game over. So I guess if you're good enough, it could be a permanent upgrade. Now, I mentioned that you can't change the difficulty, and I mean, this game really isn't all that hard, but there is an in-game way to increase the difficulty, and that is to never get the sheet. The sheet makes platforming so much easier. In fact, the game is really quite the challenge without it. I got a game over in the genie stages, and I had to finish them off without the sheet, and it really wasn't easy. Platforming becomes more challenging and inherently changes how the game is played. Now that is genius. Even though this game is not very long, there is, however, a password system in case you don't want to beat this in one sitting. This really makes me wonder why there are game overs and continues. You can just punch in the password if you run out of continues. So, in other words, you can continue if you don't have continues. The music in Aladdin is very well done. However, I happen to dislike the music in this game, and that's because I dislike the music in the movie. In fact, I don't like the movie at all, in any way. But objectively speaking, the music in this game is very well done and represents the movie very well. At the end of the game, you fight Jafar. If you've seen the movie, I'm sure you expected this. The first fight has you against human Jafar, and the second has you against Jafar the Cobra. The final fight has you against Jafar the Oh, never mind. The Cobra is the final fight. If you've seen the movie, I'm sure you expected this too. Well, congrats, you beat the game. So there you have it. It's probably what you'd expect out of a Capcom platformer based on Aladdin. This is a fantastic game, and for me that's saying a lot because I really don't like the movie it's based on. But if I put my distaste for Aladdin aside, I really can't deny this game's great qualities. I recommend this game to anyone, but especially to those who love Aladdin. I want you to tell me down in the comments below which Aladdin you like more, this one or the one for Genesis. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons, and I will see you next time. Bart's Nightmare was developed by Sculptured Software and published by Acclaim for the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis back in 1992 and 1993, respectively. It's based off the first 2 seasons of the TV show. While Bart's working on his homework, he falls asleep. While in a dream, or more appropriately, a nightmare, all the pages of his homework blow out the window and you need to get them back. The game starts on a street which I assume to be Evergreen Terrace, but in the manual it's referred to as the Windy World. This is actually a hub world. Your objective here is to find the pages. When you come across them, jump on them. They take you to a minigame. More on this in a little bit. While on Evergreen Terrace, most of what you see is trying to kill you. If you're killed here, you'll wake up. If you wake up, the game is over and you'll receive a grade that corresponds with your score and how many pages you've recovered. One of the biggest problems with Bart's Nightmare is that this game isn't very intuitive, and this is made apparent right away on Evergreen Terrace. If you've never read the instruction booklet or looked up a guide, you're not going to have any clue what any of this shit is or how to survive. Because of this, I will attempt to break down what's going on here and try to make sense of it. Most of what you see is out to hurt you or slow you down, so first I'll go over your health, which is represented by Z's. As far as I know, there are only 2 ways to get more. The first is to blow bubbles at blue Z's. Don't blow bubbles at the red Z's though, that'll do nothing except waste your gum. The second way is to jump over a basketball, then ride the skateboard. The longer you skate, the more Z's you'll get. To get an extra supply of Z's after you die, you'll need to collect 3 pillows. Jumping over Blinky will grant you 1 pillow.
Moving on to offense, there's the soda pop, which acts like a bomb and clears the screen, and the watermelon seeds that you spit. When you dispose of enemies, you'll gain points. To get an A+, you'll not only need to collect all 8 pages, but you'll need to end the game with at least 125,000 points. I mentioned earlier that your goal while in the Windy World is to recover your homework pages. These take you to a minigame, and if you win, you keep the page. There are 5 minigames in total, and their quality varies. This variation in quality is yet another problem with Bart's Nightmare. I think the 2 best games are the yellow and blue doors. The yellow door takes you to the Simpsons house where you need to defeat Itchy and Scratchy in a beat-em-up-like setting. You have a health bar, extra lives, and can pick up numerous weapons. Overall, it's not too bad. The blue door takes you to the skies as you fly over Springfield as Bartman in a shoot-em-up-like setting. Again, you have a life bar and extra lives, though your only weapon is the slingshot. The purple door takes you to Bart's bloodstream. Yeah, that's what it's actually called. So you're in your own bloodstream? It doesn't need to make sense. It is Bart's Nightmare after all. Anyway, you need to kill the germs. The germs can hurt you, but you don't have a life bar. If you take enough damage, you'll lose, and you don't have extra lives here. Eventually, Smilin' Joe Fishin' shows up. As you continue to kill germs, the force field around the page will disappear until you win. This minigame isn't particularly fun, but at least it's not too frustrating. The green door takes you to an urban setting as Bartzilla. You need to destroy enough enemies until you win. Again, you don't have a life bar nor extra lives. You just do the best you can until either the screen fades away, indicating you've lost, or a vehicle drives in and shoots a laser, causing Bartzilla to shrink. You'll win the page and immediately play the next level. This time, you're climbing the Empire State Building, I guess? Your goal here is to climb to the top and shock King Homer. It's not that easy though, because people will be throwing shit at you from the windows. If that's not enough, you have Marge flying back and forth. If you're hit by anything, you'll fall a short distance while the screen slowly auto-scrolls up. If you fall below the screen, you lose. The orange door takes you to the Temple of Maggie. I fucking hate this minigame. You just need to move to the right and collect the page. Sounds easy, but do you think I've ever done it? Nope. Again, no life bar, but you can gain extra lives by collecting the eggs. Of course, there are many obstacles in your way. Maggie can spit her pacifier at you, and the devil can show up, and he's blue for some reason, even though he's red in the show. Anyway, if he whips you, he'll cause you to move in a random direction, which is extremely annoying. Overall, I find this minigame to be frustrating and not fun at all. So that's my overview of Bart's Nightmare. Now I'll move on to what I like and dislike about the game. First, I'll start with what I like. I think the show is well represented. A lot of the characters and locations are here. Even some of the humor bleeds through. I just wish Bart's Nightmare had more of this. I also think the graphics are well done. Considering the 16-bit hardware, everything looks how it should. Okay, so that's it for what I like. Moving on to what I dislike. The music. The yellow and blue doors have okay-ish music along with the hub world. The other minigames don't have music at all. What's up with that? The controls. Now, it depends on which minigame you're playing, but for the most part, the controls are not great. In the Bartman level, I'd say the controls are pretty good, but I can't say the same for the rest of the game. Everything just feels loose or slippery, again, depending on where you are in the game. The Windy World. Every time you collect a page, this hub world gets more challenging. Enemies become more frequent and move faster, and it usually takes longer to find the next page. Now, a part of me actually likes this hub world, but later in the game you can spend a lot of time here and it gets old pretty quick. The minigames. The best minigames, in my opinion, are Bartman and Itchy and Scratchy, and even then they're only okay. Bloodstream and Bartzilla are boring at best, and the Temple of Maggie is frustrating and painful. These minigames are the bulk of the experience, and it's just too bad that none of them are fantastic. Even after all that, I still like this game, but I think nostalgia has something to do with it. Either way, I have to give this game an objective score. Overall, I give Bart's Nightmare a 5 out of 10. Now, I've been playing this game since I was a kid, never beat it, although I guess technically I have beat it. Even when you get a game over, you still beat the game, you just don't get the best ending, maybe? I don't know. But I always liked this game because I loved the show. But don't get me wrong, I only like up until Season 8. Anything after Season 8 in The Simpsons is fucking garbage. I was doing some streaming a few years ago, and some of my viewers recommended that I get Simpsons Hit and Run for PS2. Now, I always kind of avoided that game because it just didn't look interesting to me, but I picked it up for my stream, and yeah, I didn't like it. It is a better game, but like I said, anything after Season 8, I fucking hate the show. And in Simpsons Hit and Run, a lot of the later humor that I despised was definitely present in that game, so I think that helped me to hate the game a little bit. But with Bart's Nightmare, not a whole lot of the humor bleeds through, but some of it does, and it's from the seasons that I enjoy, so I think that overall helps for me to like the game at least. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. This Battletoads game was developed by Rare and published for the Super Nintendo in 1993. I got this game for Christmas in 1995. I love beat-em-ups, and my best friend, at the time, lived across the street and we played games together all the time. It's just a shame that we were so shit at video games that we couldn't even beat this. Anyway, this game looks awesome. I absolutely love the graphics. Everything looks crisp and colorful, the animations are top-notch. This game is 2-player, and each Toad has their own animations, though they otherwise seem identical. Player 1 is Pimple, and Player 2 is Rash. If you're playing single player and want to play as Rash, just plug your controller into port 2, just like the NES game. The music is also pretty darn good too. The controls are what you'd expect for a Battletoads game, and that is that they're kind of floaty. I mean, they're not too bad, you'll get used to them. But some idiot programmed the jump and attack buttons backwards, so attack is B and jump is Y or A. You fucking moron. As a kid, I loved this game. I didn't even realize it was hard. I just assumed we sucked at it. After all, most games I played as a kid I never beat. Some people call this game a beat-em-up, but I disagree. Only the first stage is a traditional beat-em-up, and believe it or not, the rest of the game is comprised of auto-scroller stages. You beat up some things in stages 1 and 2, and then that's it until the final stage. And you likely won't get that far. I sure haven't. Taking a closer look at this, the major issue here is the difficulty, and there are 2 contributing factors that make this game too hard. Number 1, you only get 3 lives and 3 continues. It's just not enough to deal with what this game throws at you. Like, why can't this game just have unlimited continues? It's not an arcade machine, for fuck's sake. That alone makes this super hard. Second is the level design. The problem is there are just too many cheap deaths. In level 1, look at this bridge. It starts burning, oh shit, and then BAM! This asshole hits you off. Well shit, there goes one of my few precious lives. How about the turbo tunnel? Oh yeah, it's back. And it's even harder this time. The first 10 times I fell here, I just thought I was dead, so I put the controller down and died. I didn't realize I was supposed to fall in and tap the jump button. You actually need to have this tunnel memorized if you want to beat it. If you screw up or forget something, you die. You don't take damage, you die. And actually, it seems like everything from this stage on kills you in one hit, so your life bar is no longer something that you need to pay attention to, at least until the final stage. In the snake pit, and to this game's credit, the first room can't kill you. It's there to teach you how to ride the snakes and does so in a safe environment. But after that, you're expected to ride the snakes while dodging spikes and other obstacles until the end of the level. That doesn't sound too hard, but oftentimes you don't know where the snakes are going and where the snakes are coming from. Sometimes they move so fast that you're dead before you can even say fuck. During your playthrough, and at some point, you realize that you're almost out of lives and continues. Then you'll get stressed about getting a game over and having to replay the whole game all over again. As a result of the stress, you start having a hard time concentrating, and then boom! Back to the beginning of the whole game. Take Super Mario for example. Sometimes it can be tough, but for the most part you can just react to what's happening. You don't need to have it memorized. Of course that helps too, but generally speaking you can beat a Mario game with just your reflexes. In Battlemaniacs, that's not the case. Dying is actually required in order to learn the levels and memorize the patterns. This game was designed to kill you repeatedly until you've memorized what to do. With that being the primary philosophy behind Battletoads and Battlemaniacs, why the fuck is there not unlimited continues or a password system? If your answer is, well, playing through all the beginning levels again will make you a better player. Yeah, I mean, I get you, but the majority of players are just gonna get frustrated, shut the game off, and never play it again. Like what I did when I was 8. I mean, I played it as an adult, but at the time I sold the game, and I didn't touch it again until I was in my 20s. I mean, look at speedrunners. Those guys are amazing, but generally speaking, they use emulators and save states, and they practice a very specific part over and over again. We didn't have that back in the 90s. You know, it comes down to that this game is just too hard for its own good, and it's not hard for the right reasons. As a developer and a business, don't you want people to play your game, maybe beat your game? This game kicks your ass so hard right off the hop, who's gonna stick with it? Did Rare actually think kids in the 90s were gonna fucking beat this? I still can't beat this. I do not have the patience because, aside from the difficulty, I just don't find this game all that fun to play. Level 1 is moderately enjoyable, but knowing that the rest of the game is all auto-scroll? No thanks. Luckily, Battlemaniacs does have cheats. The only cheats I could find are for start with 5 lives and 5 continues, and a super jump. I never used the jump, but I highly recommend using the lives cheat if you decide to torture yourself by playing this game. One thing that always bothered me is that Zitz is not playable. They did the same thing in the NES game, but with Pimple. I don't like that. Just imagine a Ninja Turtles game where one of the turtles was just unplayable. He was kidnapped, and that's the storyline. I don't know, I don't think I like that. I don't like that idea. It is a silly nitpick, mind you. So that's Battlemaniacs. It looks great, has awesome music, the controls are passable, but the difficulty and overall level design just make this something that I have a really hard time recommending. Is this game bad? Well, I can't really say that either. I mean, maybe you want a game that's tough as shit and you can handle the frustration, and in which case, hell yeah, play this game. It's a shame that this game doesn't really appeal to a wider audience. I really, really want to love this game, but at the end of the day, I just can't be bothered. I give Battletoads and Battlemaniacs for the Super Nintendo a 4 out of 10. Have any of you guys beat this game, and what's your opinion of it? Hopefully you guys aren't too angry that I somewhat took a dump on a Battletoads game. Please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.
Beethoven was developed by Riedel Software Productions and published by High-Tech Expressions for the Super Nintendo and released in December 1993. I'm actually confused as to what the title of this game actually is. On the game pack it says Beethoven, the Ultimate Canine Caper, but on the title screen it just says Beethoven's Second. There's no mention of the subtitle anywhere in the game. So which is it? I know Beethoven's Second is the name of the second movie, and I know this game is based off of that movie, but yeah, they fucked up. Anyway, Beethoven is a single-player action platformer where you take control of the titular dog, Beethoven, and your goal is to rescue all of your puppies. There are 4 worlds, each with 2 levels. Every level has you walking to the right while dealing with enemies and avoiding obstacles. Later in the game, there's a lot more platforming, and considering how bad the controls are, well, let's say it can be quite the challenge. During the first level of every world, your goal is to just rescue the puppy. The second level of every world has you escorting that puppy back to its mother. So yeah, every second stage is an escort mission. I can appreciate the attempt at trying to change up the gameplay. I guess my critique here is that they should have changed the gameplay to something good. Escort missions? Really? Nobody likes those. The puppy can walk by himself but can't jump. This means that when there are obstacles, you'll have to pick him up and carry him. Alright, so in case you couldn't tell, this is one of the worst Super Nintendo games ever. You have 2 attacks: barking and shaking off water. Barking just sucks. If you just press Y, you'll bark, but there's a slight delay. This is because you're meant to hold Y to charge the bark. By doing this, you'll shoot the bark further. You don't kill enemies either, you just scare them away, but thankfully, enemies don't respawn, unless of course you die. Some enemies take only 1 bark, while others take many. If you're doing an escort mission, you'll have to put the puppy down before attacking. This can be a real problem because enemies can appear so suddenly. Shaking off water is much better. There's no delay, and it immediately scares away all enemies on screen. The only problem is that you need to first get wet. Each stage has water sources like bird baths or sprinklers. You only get 1 shot when you're wet, so you'll have to find more water if you want to do it again. Throughout the levels, you can find a few different items, 3 to be exact. Dog bones replenish 1 paw of health, while chicken legs replenish all of your health. Meanwhile, steaks give you a 1-up. The level design is ass water. Level layouts and enemy placements are poorly planned. Look at this. At the beginning of this level, an apple just falls on you if you don't move fast enough. They even put a dog bone just behind you too, so it's like they knew that that was a cheap shot. Then why even put the apple right there? Speaking of apples, they're actually pretty deadly in this game, so check check this out. There's an apple in this tree, and I'm standing on this fence. So I jump off the fence like how anyone would, and I manage to collide with an apple and take damage. Oh, come on, I couldn't even see it. Another annoyance is that there are no checkpoints at all. So if you die at any point in a level, you'll have to go back to the beginning of the stage. This game isn't even that hard, but the shit-ass controls certainly don't help. This game also doesn't have the courtesy to refill your health at the start of a new stage. Thanks. Some levels have platforms that suddenly fall from under you. What is that about? There's no indication that these platforms would fall. They don't look any different. They don't shake before they fall. They just simply fall. How would you know that on your first time through the stage? You wouldn't. How about this? I jump on this moving platform and, oh shit, there's a guy over there. I guess I'll just stay on this platform and bark at his ass, and, what's with the screen? Well, this is annoying. See, if they had just placed that enemy in a better spot, maybe not right in front of a moving platform, then this shifting camera wouldn't have made me lose even more respect for this, I'll be generous, game. I should also mention that Beethoven is the type of game which has platforms that you can fall through if you don't jump on them good enough. What is up with that? Were platforms like the most difficult thing to program? It seems like most bad platformers have this issue. Here's a clip from the first time I beat Beethoven a couple years ago while I was streaming on Twitch. Oh. Okay, so I've touched on the controls a bit, but yeah, they're not good. It's hard to describe, but there are issues with input delay and also with momentum. Like sometimes when you're trying to jump across some platforms, you'll just come to a halt. Like, what the fuck? But it doesn't always happen. If you've come to a halt, your next jump is fucked because you need to be moving. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but trust me, it's pretty shit. The music is also terrible. It seems like most levels just play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. I'm not knocking Beethoven's music. In fact, I rather enjoy the music composed by Ludwig van Beethoven, but of course, like any shitty video game, they made it sound like fucking ball sacks. Last but certainly not least, the graphics. Just look at them. The animations suck. Look at the way the dog moves. Look at the enemies. Not to mention the lack of enemy variety. World 3 is just ugly with an overuse of blue. I can honestly say that the only thing I liked was the background in the final world, and even then, I don't ever need to see it again. Overall, Beethoven is your typical piece of shit movie tie-in video game handed over to a small and inexperienced studio, all to make nothing more than a quick buck. If a game is tied to a movie, it'll sell. It might not sell well, but it'll sell. If the development company is small and inexperienced, you can pay them less. I think that's why a lot of movie games are delegated to small development companies. Sadly, this is the kind of garbage we often get left with. The consumers did not get what they paid for. This game has no depth. It's 8 straightforward levels, and what you see is what you get. There are no secret levels, no difficulty settings, no advanced controls to master, no other playable characters, no 2-player mode, nothing. It really is nothing more than walk to the right and try not to die. It's a shallow experience that was thrown together to make a quick buck. Just for reference, this game is awful, but I would still rather play Beethoven than The Wizard of Oz. Let that sink in. No, I'll wait. I will wait right here while that sinks in. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Don't play this game, and I'll see you next time. Brainlord was developed by a company called Produce and published by Enix in 1994. Yeah, the same team who worked on the 7th Saga. Brainlord is a top-down action-adventure game with a very strong emphasis on puzzles. The game opens with a cutscene in which your father explains that he's a dragon warrior and he's searching for the last dragon. He asks that you take over his quest if he doesn't return. Well, of course he doesn't return, and you set out to finish what he started, I guess? You have a bunch of friends who are always hanging around everywhere you go, both in town and in dungeons. There's not really any real character development with them, they just kind of tell you things. There are a total of 5 dungeons, and these are where the majority of the game take place. I'm sad to say that there's no big sprawling overworld to explore, to which I was kind of surprised and disappointed. There are only 2 towns in the whole game, and a few times you'll travel through grassy plains, but they're over before you know it. And that's it. Practically the whole game takes place in dungeons. It's pretty much one right after another, and these dungeons are huge. Unfortunately, they're also quite dull. They're packed full of monsters, though they don't add much to the overall difficulty. You earn money by killing enemies, and if you die, you lose half. Monsters respawn as soon as you go outside of their spawn area, so this is great for farming cash, but it's annoying as hell when you're just trying to solve a puzzle.
Speaking of which, the majority of this game's challenge lies within the puzzles, and they can get pretty tough. You'll be pushing a lot of rocks and balls to activate switches, or solve riddles which require you to press certain switches or push other objects or whatever. There's tons of puzzles, but due to the lack of variety, they might start to wear on you. There's also a lot of platforming. Platforming sections are not too bad, but they can get pretty frustrating. To help you get through these big-ass dungeons, you can view a map by using the X-ray glasses. This is nice, except they don't show you where you've been or haven't been, or where locked doors are located. So it's not of much use. Well, thanks anyway. Overall, I find the dungeons kind of bland and ultimately not very fun. In town, and occasionally in the dungeons, you'll encounter merchants. You can purchase equipment, consumable items, and sometimes fairies. Fairies act as companions, and they all have different abilities, like being able to shoot fire or to light up dark rooms. Collecting blue spheres will allow your fairies to level up. You, on the other hand, do not level up. To increase your attack and defense, you'll need to equip different weapons and armor. To increase your HP, use heart items, which are typically found in chests. The graphics of Brainlord are a mixed bag. The characters look meh, and the dungeons are bland like I said earlier, but I think the towns look great. In fact, the town of Toronto is one of my favorite video game towns ever. It just looks so well kept. Nice green grass, clear water, the buildings look neat. I know I'm focusing way too much on this, but along with the awesome music, I just love to spend time in this town. I just wish I enjoyed the dungeons this much. When you own a lot of video games, it can kind of be tough to figure out what game you want to play next, and as a result I end up just mindlessly looking at all the video games I own and just trying to figure out what I want to play, and sometimes I never come to a conclusion. But one time in particular, I actually decided to pop in Brainlord just to walk around the town of Toronto, just because I like it that much. I know that's kind of weird, but hey, it's a town and I like it. So that's Brainlord. It's absolutely not the worst game, but there's a reason that nobody talks about it. Overall, it can oftentimes feel like a tedious slog. I give Brainlord a 6 out of 10. Now keep in mind that this is just my opinion of it, and I think your enjoyment will depend heavily on whether or not you like puzzles. So if this looks like it's up your alley, I would definitely give it a try. This may become one of your favorite games ever. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. Please hit like, please subscribe. I have a lot more content coming, and I'll see you next week. Breath of Fire was developed by Capcom and published by Squaresoft for the Super Nintendo in 1994. Breath of Fire was re-released years later on the Game Boy Advance in 2001. The story follows Ryu and his companions on a quest to defeat the Dark Dragon Clan, which threatens the Light Dragon Clan. Well, there's more to it, but I'll leave that up to you. Breath of Fire is a traditional JRPG set in a nameless medieval world. All the typical JRPG stuff you'd expect is here. You fight monsters in turn-based combat, visit different towns and villages, explore many different dungeons, caves, and castles, all while you meet and recruit a plethora of different characters. I just finished Breath of Fire and I really liked this game. However, there are some things about it that I don't love, so we'll get into that now. I think the translation is kind of weak and this hurts the game in a few different ways. Keep in mind that when I play an RPG, I don't binge it and beat it within just a couple days. I usually take a couple weeks. So number one, while playing Breath of Fire, I actually forgot what the story was. Overall, the characters aren't really talking about what's going on as a whole, and therefore Breath of Fire loses focus on the plot. It wasn't until the last quarter of the game that I was even reminded about what the whole point of the adventure was. Number 2. So often you won't be told where to go or what to do. Or you might be told what to do, just not where to go to do it. Like this part here. The king wants his daughter out of the safe. So you go down to the safe and she just says, "If my mother was alive, period, she would have told him to do the right thing." Okay. So you go back and talk to the king again, and he just repeats himself. Well, that's great. Now what? It turns out you have to go to this tower. Yeah, would you have guessed that? No one tells you to go there. You just have to go there. By the way, this is just one small example of how often this game doesn't clearly direct you to your next objective. Breath of Fire is the type of game where you might want to use a walkthrough just so you don't get lost, waste time, and get frustrated. The third and final issue with the translation is with the menu. There are many items that have unclear abbreviations, and the descriptions of these items are also not helpful. For example, let's take a look at the DK key item. I'm pretty sure it stands for dark key, and using it allows you to cycle between night and day. But when you examine this item to learn its effects, it just says, this has a connection to the goddess Tyr. Okay, well how the fuck does that help? Again, you might want to pull that guide out just so you know what all the items are and what they do. So I think the translation is Breath of Fire's biggest problem. It adversely affects not one, but 3 different aspects of the game, and for a lot of people, that's enough to turn them off for good. How about the encounter rate? I've heard a lot of people complain about this, but honestly, it didn't bother me at all. I found it to be comparable to other games at the time. You're not constantly running into enemies every 2 steps. Another thing is that you move slowly. There is no dash button. Again, this didn't bother me at all, but if you're used to dashing, I can see how this might really annoy you. Lastly, I'd like to go back to the menu for a second. You cannot auto-organize your inventory. You'll have to do this manually. This actually did bother me. Many other RPGs at the time had an organize button, so how did they forget to include this option? In my opinion though, none of these inconveniences are deal breakers, but they are something you might want to consider before jumping into this game. Okay, so what makes Breath of Fire worth playing? The first and most obvious is that this game looks and sounds fantastic. I love the look of the overworld and all of the towns. Most of the dungeons, I admit, are maybe a little bland, but this is hardly a deal breaker. The music is catchy and always seems to fit what's happening in the game. At first glance, Breath of Fire may seem archaic and outdated. This is because some modern day conveniences don't appear to be available, and sadly many are not. However, you do get access to some quality of life improvements. Early in the game, you'll get the warp spell, which allows you to fast travel to any town that you've already visited. Later in the game, you'll get the exit spell, which allows you to warp out of dungeons. Breath of Fire also boasts a large cast of characters, all with unique abilities. For example, while exploring the sea, you might want to change your party leader to Gobi, so you can turn into a fish and explore without the hassle of enemy encounters. Or you can switch to Bow to hunt animals in the overworld. Feel like fishing? Equip Ryu with a rod and find a place to sit down and relax. You'll want to do this too, because you can actually find pretty sweet equipment while fishing. I'll leave it at these few examples as I don't want to spoil too much here, but I think this is great and definitely adds some flavor to the overall experience. I mentioned that the dungeons are a little on the boring side, but thankfully the towns and villages are actually fun to explore. You can find tons of secrets. You might be able to push around some furniture or find cracks in the walls that lead to different secret rooms. Or you might find items tucked away in dressers or beds. It's always exciting every time you enter a new village because you get to explore and you never know what you'll find. Also, Breath of Fire is not a hard game, at least I didn't think so. You really don't need to grind either, as long as you're not running from battles too often. However, if you choose to grind, there's a nifty and much appreciated auto battle button, which makes battles easier to sit through. One neat feature that Breath of Fire has that you don't often see in other Super Nintendo RPGs is a day-night cycle. Overall, it doesn't have a huge impact on the game, but there are times where you'll need to enter a town or dungeon at a particular time of day. Again, another mechanic that just adds more flavor. So that's Breath of Fire. It's a pretty standard 16-bit JRPG, but it does a few things that make it stand out. So is this game worth your time? I'm gonna go with the hard yes, but only if you're a seasoned RPG player who loves the genre. Yeah, the game's not too hard and beginners probably won't struggle too badly, at least not at first, but all of the nuances, both good and bad, really take patience and commitment. Something that a newbie to RPGs might not have, and ultimately, they might turn this one off for good. Make sure you come into this game with a little bit of experience under your belt, and I think that you'll really enjoy what this game has to offer. Well, that's all for today. I want to thank you guys so much. Make sure to smash all the appropriate buttons, and I will see you guys next time. Battletoads Double Dragon was developed by Rare and published by TradeWest for the NES in June of 1993, but later that year was ported to the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, and Game Boy. Now, if you've been watching my content for any length of time, you may know that I'm a pretty strong critic of Battletoads. I fucking hate Battletoads. I want to like Battletoads. I mean, I think the characters are cool, but it just seems like Rare can't seem to make a good Battletoads game. With that being said, I think they finally hit the nail on the head with Battletoads Double Dragon, because I think this game is awesome and is really the only Battletoads game I like. I have not played the Game Boy version, but I thoroughly enjoy all versions of Battletoads Double Dragon, and yes, there are differences between all versions. However, in this video, we're talking about just the Super Nintendo version, which, by the way, I think is the easiest. Crest. Upon turning the game on, you're presented with a cast roll of all the playable characters as well as the bosses. It's neat to get a preview of the bosses who are waiting to pound your ass, or play target practice with your butt. Oh god, I hope he's not expecting a bullseye or a hole-in-one. Seems kind of sexually inappropriate, but I digress. Between all the levels, you get a small cutscene showing what just happened and a glimpse of what's next. The presentation in this game is fantastic. The graphics are superb and absolutely do not disappoint. All the character sprites and stage graphics are fun to look at, and they all seem to have an above average level of polish. The music is some of the best beat-em-up music you'll find, but is that really a surprise considering David Wise composed the soundtrack? Check it out. Is it even possible to listen to this and not want to hurt something? Battletoads Double Dragon is not a very long game with only 7 levels each with a couple stages. The majority of the game appears to take place in outer space. After picking up the Lee brothers, your team is then dropped onto the outside of a spacecraft referred to as the Colossus. Considering how much of the game takes place in space, they sure did a great job at making the journey feel fresh throughout with a variety of level settings. I love how the first level has you fighting on the tail of the Colossus, then you're exploring the inside. I think my favorite level is Missile Mayhem. How cool is it to be fighting on board a fast-traveling missile? I also love how this missile was designed to destroy Earth, but there's like rooms with windows and doors and shit all over it. Like, who made this missile? And who paid for it? I just imagine, like, pretend the Dark Queen was successful. She's like, haha, there goes the missile. Yeah, we just destroyed the Earth. Haha. Haha. All right, well, I'm kind of hungry now. Hey guys, should we order pizza? Oh, that's right, we just destroyed the Earth. No more pizza. Oh. Well, I guess we can always watch some TV. Oh, that's right, we destroyed the Earth, so there's no more TV. Okay, I guess we'll just kind of hang out for a bit. Battletoads Double Dragon is, of course, a crossover game, but make no mistake, this is primarily a Battletoads game. That being said, many of the frustrations from the original Battletoads have been removed. Although not nearly as tough as the original, this game is still really challenging and is not for the faint of heart. Some people praise the original Battletoads for having so many unique gameplay elements. While I understand where people are coming from, the biggest problem that comes from that type of design, and in the case of Battletoads in particular, each level feels like a brand new game, and thus you have to constantly master new playstyles and controls. When I was trying to beat the original Battletoads, I would be doing so well, and then suddenly I get to a new level, and then I would just die repeatedly because I just didn't know what to do. Then I'd have to play everything all over again just to have another chance to figure out what to do. How annoying is that? In the case of Battletoads Double Dragon, this doesn't really happen. It's because this game actually knows what it wants to be, and that is a beat 'em up. There is one Asteroids type level to add a bit of spice, but otherwise this is a beat 'em up through and through. Once you've played the first level and have a good grasp of the controls, you're set for the rest of the game, for the most part. There are just a few other areas where the controls may take a moment to realize. One example is in Stage 3 with swinging on the ropes. But otherwise, I found that in Battletoads Double Dragon there aren't any major surprises. This change in game design alone causes the game to be much less frustrating. In my opinion, this change was for the better. In Battletoads Double Dragon, you have 5 playable characters, Rash, Pimple, and Zitz, as well as both Bimmy and Jimmy Lee. Yeah, technically there are 5 playable characters, but really there are only 2, a toad or a dragon. See, all 3 Battletoads play exactly the same. There's no difference between any of them other than their color. The same can be said for the dragons. They're both the same other than their color. Now, one major problem with the Super Nintendo version in particular is that the toads fucking suck. You are much better off playing this game as one of the dragons. They're much faster and they actually have an effective jump attack, unlike the toads. I guess you could consider the toads as a sort of hard mode. I'll give you a few examples. In level 5, Missile Mayhem, certain rooms have an enemy named General Slaughter. Here's how easy he can be with one of the dragons. But with the Toads, he's a bit more of a handful. In level 3, Ropes and Roper, toward the end of the level, there's a section with a moving floor and multiple ceiling crushers. There's an item capsule that contains invincibility, which makes this section so much easier. If you're one of the Lee twins, getting this item is no problem at all because they can just kick the capsule. But if you're one of the Toads, their hammer down attack takes too long, and by the time the move makes contact, the moving floor has already moved them far away from the capsule. It's not impossible, but it seems unnecessarily difficult. So here's the thing, I really can't tell if these examples were intentional and that the Toads are indeed a hard mode option, or if these examples are just more Battletoads oversights. Considering how shitty other Battletoads games are, it really wouldn't surprise me if these were oversights. Since we're already talking about oversights, check this out. In Stage 2, just after you exit this elevator, you'll see a capsule. If you hit it from the left, the 1-up goes off screen just enough that you can't get it. You fuckers. So make sure you hit it from the right side. This is so stupid because naturally you're going to hit it from the left because obviously that's what's intuitive. I think the pacing with Battletoads Double Dragon is much improved over the original Battletoads, but it's still not perfect. We still have the turbo tunnel early on, but thankfully it's made so much more forgiving this time around. However, there is a significant difficulty spike in Stage 3. Now I like Stage 3 a lot, but it's really long with a lot of pitfalls, ceiling crushers, and rope swinging. Whenever I have a buddy over and we're playing this 2 players, Stage 3 is always where the game ends. My second player is always never good enough to make it through Stage 3. The problem with the overall pacing is made apparent when you're much further in the game. Levels 2, 3, and 5 are all quite long and offer decent gameplay variety, but the last 2 levels feel like they were just quickly thrown together. When you're in the Shadow Bosses stage, it's just a quick run to the right. The final stage is an even quicker run to the right. Man, they really didn't put much effort into these final stages. What a bummer. Another issue that you may have a problem with is that most bosses can be defeated with nothing more than spamming the dash attack. Now this really doesn't bother me, but if you were hoping for interesting bosses who require unique skills and the application of intricate techniques, yeah, it ain't here. But that's okay because beating the shit out of all the standard enemies is so satisfying. Whether you're beating them with your fists or using the leg of a walker, it's not hard to feel like a badass. I also like how the Toads and the Dragons each have their own attack animations. It really helps to establish and distinguish their personalities. Alright, so there you have it, guys. I love this game. It's certainly not perfect, but I think it's a big step up from the original Battletoads. I do think it's a bummer that the Toads are so useless and the last few levels seem to have been quickly thrown together, but the rest of the game is a lot of fun and I definitely think it's worth your time. Have any of you guys beat this game, and which character do you like to play as? And for the record, I have beat this with both a dragon and a toad. Anyway, thank you so much, guys. I really do appreciate you watching. Please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Tiny Toon Adventures Buster Busts Loose is an action platformer that was developed and published by Konami for the Super Nintendo in 1993. Based on the 90s cartoon of the same name, Tiny Toon Adventures Buster Busts Loose is one player only and has you take control of Buster Bunny as you find your way through 6 stages with the goal of rescuing Babs Bunny. There's even a password system in case you don't want to beat this in one sitting. The game is presented as if all characters of the show are actors in different episodes of the cartoon. So your goal is to rescue Babs Bunny, like I said, but she's just acting. She's not in any real danger. It's all just for fun. Not that video game characters are ever in any real danger, but I mean, you know what I'm saying. Buster Busts Loose is a great looking game which resembles the show it's based on. It has a great use of color and the animations are spot on. In terms of music, you'll often hear the Tiny Toons theme song throughout the game, but there are many different renditions of it. For example, you'll hear the vanilla version when you first turn the game on, but in Stage 2 the song has a western flair to it. Of course, the main theme is not the only piece of music you'll hear. The song in the haunted house level has a great spooky vibe, and I absolutely love the music in the football stadium. Overall, the composer did a great job with the music. I think what makes this game stand out from its contemporaries is that the level settings are strongly varied and the gameplay is always changing.
The biggest example of this gameplay variation is obviously in the football stage where you're actually playing a game of football. How crazy is that? In this level, you need to get a touchdown to win the game. You have 4 downs to make 10 yards. If you don't make 10 yards within 4 downs, you lose a life. But if you make the 10 yards, you return to the first down and continue. It's just like actual football. This level is just absolutely amazing, and I'm not even a huge sports fan, but I do think this is truly remarkable. You'll see variation in level settings too. You'll start the journey in the Acme Luniversity before making your way through the Wild West, a haunted house, the aforementioned football stadium, the sky, and lastly, outer space. In level 5, after you're done platforming across balloons in the sky, instead of a traditional boss fight, you'll be sort of playing a game of pinball. Like, what? That's awesome! Speaking of boss fights, all the boss fights in this game are super fun with inventive designs. Instead of just slapping the shit out of Dizzy Devil in level 1, you have to feed his fat ass to knock him into a food coma. You do this by jumping into the conveyor belt to bump the food around and into his mouth. In the Wild West, the boss fight has you destroying the locomotive. There are 3 difficulty settings: easy, normal, and hard, although in-game they're referred to as children, normal, and challenge. When you play on easy, they actually remove the sky level as well as certain parts of other levels. For example, in stage 1, there's no boss fight against Dizzy Devil. The difference between normal and hard is that on hard you have a smaller health meter. Otherwise, everything seems to be the same. The number of continues you get also depends on which difficulty you choose. The controls in Buster Busts Loose are good, but take some getting used to. For example, your main attack looks like nothing more than a jump on the enemies. In actuality, it's a separate button that does a sort of jump kick. If you jump on an enemy without doing the jump kick, you'll take damage. Buster also has a dash that you can use to run up walls and slide under small passageways. You can only dash when you have energy in the meter. The dash meter will refill automatically when you're not dashing, but collecting a certain item will refill the meter when you are. The levels are all well made and were built around these abilities. And just to reiterate, the jump kick and the dash work well, they just take some time to get used to. Throughout the stages, you'll collect a few different items. Once you collect 100 stars, you'll earn a 1-up. Buster tokens also give a 1-up. You'll also find a few different types of trophies. Silver carrot trophies replenish 1 heart, the gold carrots replenish all your health, and the crystal carrots give you an extra heart container. The silver Go-Go Dodo trophies refill your dash meter, the gold ones make you invincible, and the crystal trophies turn all enemies into stars. The stages are broken up with minigames which range from great to not great. Some of these games are based entirely on luck, like the weight scale game or bingo. Because these are luck-based games, they're not really all that fun, but the minigame where you play as Babs is pretty fun, and so is the racket minigame. Now, I think this game is absolutely fantastic, but there is one point of criticism that I have to address, and that is the difficulty. There's a significant difficulty spike with Stage 2, the Wild West. If you played this game as a kid, this was the level you never got past. Otherwise, the difficulty ramping is fine. The Wild West is a pretty long stage with many auto-scrolling segments. Most of the danger comes from instant death traps, and while there are checkpoints throughout, there don't seem to be enough. Dying usually means having to repeat large portions of the stage, and I mean, let's be real, who actually enjoys auto-scrollers? The Wild West is a good stage, but it should have been stage 5, not stage 2. Now, I've owned this game for a really long time, and every few years I'd pop this into my Super Nintendo and give it a play. But what would always happen as I'd get to level 2, I'd get a bunch of game overs, and then I would just throw it back on the shelf and move on to something different. But that's a shame, because this game really is fantastic, but it was held back from me because of this difficulty spike in stage 2. Overall, Buster Busts Loose is a fantastic game that you need to experience at least once. The only major flaw is the stage 2 difficulty spike, but once you get good enough, this won't even bother you. Every stage is varied and fun to play. Just as the lyrics in the Tiny Toons theme song would suggest, expect the unexpected. And just to throw a cherry on top of this sundae, Buster Busts Loose is also inexpensive at just over $13 Canadian for a loose cart. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. Have you played this game? Have you beat this game? Did you get stuck on level 2 when you were a kid? And did you get frustrated to the point that you pulled out eyelashes and mailed them to your next door neighbor along with samples of your dog's fecal matter? Guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Chuck Rock is a side-scrolling action platformer developed by Core Design and originally published for the Amiga in 1991. Chuck Rock was then ported to multiple other platforms, including the Super Nintendo, which of course is the version I'm reviewing. For those of you who don't know, I did a video a while back about Super Nintendo games that I hate, and well, Chuck Rock was on the list. So I figured I would review this game and analyze it more critically. Chuck Rock is a caveman and the game takes place in the prehistoric age. The story is, well, he's trying to save his girlfriend. That's it. There are a total of 5 levels, all with several stages. The objective is always to walk to the right. Chuck Rock can defend himself in 3 ways. The main attack is what I call a belly bump, which has really short range. This is done by pressing Y while on the ground. While in the air, instead of the belly bump, Chuck Rock will kick, which also has short range. Lastly, Chuck Rock can chuck rocks. Huh. Clever. Throughout the levels, you'll collect health refills which come in the form of hearts, and different foods, all of which just add to your overall points. One neat touch is that each stage has its own food. The points, however, are completely worthless. There's actually no reason to collect food other than trying to top your previous score. Well, like, who does that? The level design in Chuck Rock is largely weak. There are some pretty tight jumps and the occasional leap of faith. Oftentimes you'll jump off a ledge just to land on an enemy below. Because of this, it's best to take this game slow. I mean, you don't have to go too slow, but you know, don't rush through it. Though the objective is to walk to the right, the levels are big enough to explore, but the only thing you'll find is food, and seeing as how food amounts to nothing and you can't find 1-ups, it's best to just head to the right while trying to take as little damage as possible. Now, I just think this was a huge missed opportunity. If you're gonna make big sprawling levels, make them worth exploring. Have bonus rooms, or branching paths, or multiple exits, or hidden power-ups or 1-ups. Heck, even if they just made the points worth something like free lives, that alone would have been enough. Plenty of action platformers that came before Chuck Rock did those things. So why not Chuck Rock? Enemy behavior is frantic and their placement is sporadic, meaning that predicting their movements is almost impossible. They jump out from behind objects in the foreground, they fly from off screen and hit you before you can react. Sometimes they're just too high or too low to hit with your belly, and oftentimes, chucking rocks is just a fucking disaster. Chuck will throw rocks in an arc, so this is his long-range attack, but if an enemy is moving quickly towards you, you're fucked. Your options are either throw the rock and miss, then take damage, or gently place the rock back down, then take damage. I would avoid using rocks, although sometimes it's necessary, but the kick and belly jump are almost just as fucking useless because of how short the fucking range is. On the other hand, the bosses are the opposite. They're extremely predictable. There's practically no sophistication with their patterns, so beating them is a breeze. In terms of difficulty, Chuck Rock lies somewhere in the middle. The biggest problem is that you're not equipped to deal with the frantic enemies, and it's made worse by the fact that you only have 3 lives, no continues, and no opportunity to gain lives. In this game's defense, you do have a pretty generous health bar, and heart pickups are frequent enough, but that still doesn't alleviate the frustration completely. The graphics in Chuck Rock are actually pretty well done. Each level is vibrant and colorful with nice backgrounds and tasty looking food. Most enemies are also a joy to look at. Most, not all. I see a lot of people online who seem to really enjoy the music of Chuck Rock, but I don't know, I don't particularly like it that much. Maybe it just needs to grow on me, but I don't think I'll play this game enough to get to that point. Now, I had mentioned that this game is featured in my most hated Super Nintendo games video, so I've hated this game since I was 13. My dad took my brother and me to the game store, and I thought Chuck Rock was actually Joe and Mac, so needless to say, I was pretty disappointed. I thought the music and the level design sucked back then, but my biggest problem was with Chuck Rock the character. I didn't want to play as some fat, smelly goof of a caveman who screams like a loser when taking damage. I hated that you attack with your gut and kick with your dirty, stinky-ass foot. I was used to playing as cool characters like Mega Man or Simon Belmont, even Joe and Mac are cool. So to play as Chuck Rock just kind of felt like a downgrade. As a kid, I was super disappointed. I mean, who's gonna look at this cover and say, ooh, I can't wait to suspend disbelief and play as this guy? Now, this doesn't bother me as an adult, and I know that part of the appeal of this game is that Chuck Rock is a bit of a slapstick buffoon with poor hygiene, but I don't know, I still don't love him as a character. So now that I've mentioned all that negative stuff, I do admit that my hatred for the game and its objective quality don't match. As a 13-year-old, I would have given this game a 1 out of 10, but that wouldn't actually be fair. As an adult, though, who's reviewed this game critically, I give Chuck Rock a 5 out of 10. A 5 is right in the middle. It's not bad, it's not good. Chuck Rock doesn't offend, nor excite. It's just a plain old boring caveman game. From what I can understand, all the different ports of Chuck Rock range in quality, so I'm curious to see how all the other versions hold up. Guys, I want to know your opinion of Chuck Rock. Leave it in the comments. If you like this video, please hit like, and if you're new here, please subscribe, and I will see you next time. Maui Mallard in Cold Shadow was developed by Disney Interactive Studios and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo in 1997. Cold Shadow is an action platformer where you take control of Maui Mallard through 8 levels, all with several stages. I never understood why they refer to Donald as Maui Mallard. Like, who the fuck's Maui Mallard? You start the game out as Donald the detective, equipped with a bug gun. You can pick up lightning and firebug ammo and even combine them. The goal is to get to the end of the stage while collecting as much loot as you can. If you collect enough loot, you're able to play a bonus game where you have to set off a certain amount of fireworks. If you succeed, you win a password, which means if you fail or don't collect enough loot to even play the bonus, no password for you. I think that's kind of bullshit. Like, what if you're in a fucking hurry and you just need to finish the level and get the password to return to it later? In fact, when I was playing this, my girlfriend and I were gonna go grocery shopping and she's like, I'm just gonna take a shower, and I was like, fine, and I came downstairs and I started playing Cold Shadow, and just as I was beating the level, she finishes out of the shower and I'm like, okay, fuck, I gotta hurry. And then I get the bonus, and then I fucking didn't win. And I didn't realize that you didn't get the password if you didn't win, so the thing is like, fuck you, no password. So now what do? Either I play another level in hopes of getting the next password and waste time, or shut it off and then return to it later and have to replay that whole level again. It's kind of bullshit. I don't know. I don't like that. Starting with Stage 2, you unlock the ability to transform into Cold Shadow, the ninja. Cold Shadow is equipped with a bow staff. Aside from attacking, you're able to use the bow to climb up narrow passages and even swing on certain objects. As the ninja, you need to collect yin-yangs to increase your power. The color of your belt changes as your power increases. I think that's a really neat touch. You're able to switch back and forth between the ninja and the detective, provided you have enough yin-yangs. Most of the levels are your standard action platformer fare. There are some unique levels, however, such as the level where you're bungee jumping, or the underwater level where you shoot your gun in order to propel yourself in the opposite direction. All these levels are well designed and really fun to play. This game has a dark yet light-hearted tone, and the difficulty is just right. The graphics and sound effects are fantastic, and the music is pretty good. There are just a few things I don't like besides having to win your password. For one, check out the camera. When you face left or right, the screen quickly shifts. I fucking hate that. Just stay still. And another thing, sometimes hitting enemies is kind of awkward. In the second stage, anytime I'd attack an enemy, they'd hit me as well. So we just play shot for shot until I eventually die. Turns out, it's better to duck and hit them. It's still dangerous, but it is safer. Another example is when you're using the gun. I don't really know how to explain this, but just sometimes it's hard to land shots. I don't know, maybe I just suck. Other than that, I think this is a great game and it's definitely worth checking out. Cold Shadow has a similar vibe to other games like Earthworm Jim or Lion King, so if you like those games, there's a pretty good chance you'll like Cold Shadow as well. I give Maui Mallard in Cold Shadow a 7 out of 10. So I actually got this game for Christmas one year when I was a kid, and I didn't get far. I got to Stage 2. And that was it, and it was because you'd hit a ninja and they'd hit you, and then you'd hit them and they'd hit you, and then, like, I don't know, I just found it tough, and I never got past Stage 2, and that's actually my experience with this game up until I did the review. For this review, of course, I forced myself through it, and I figured it out, and the game's not too hard. It's actually pretty easy. But yeah, if you struggle with Stage 2, just be patient, fight through it, and this game is actually quite fun. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. Please hit like, please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next week. Demon's Crest was developed and published by Capcom for the Super Nintendo in 1994, and is part of the Gargoyles Quest series. Demon's Crest is a 2D action platformer where you take control of Firebrand as you attempt to retrieve all the crests and defeat Phalanx. This game is obviously similar to the Gargoyles Quest games. And I do mean similar because Demon's Crest is somewhat different. If you haven't played either Gargoyles Quest games, I'd compare this to Mega Man, though Demon's Crest is more slow-paced. Right out the gate, this game is beautiful. Everything about it, the stages, the sprites, the animation, it's all so good. In fact, this may be one of the best looking Super Nintendo games. The music is also very well done, though none of it really gets stuck in my head. Still though, it fits this game very well, and combined with the graphics, really helped to give this game a dreary atmosphere. This game opens with a boss fight in the obligatory intro stage. After that, you take to the skies in a Mode 7 world map similar to the world map in Secret of Mana. Here, you're able to fly to any stage you want. If you press start, you get an overview of the map and the levels are numbered. That's pretty cool. At the start of the game, you're able to shoot fire, jump, float, fly, cling to walls, and attack the background. You can fly for as long as you want, though if you fly over everything, you may miss collectibles. As you progress, you'll obtain different crests which allow you to change forms into different gargoyles who have their own abilities. For example, the Earth Gargoyle can't fly, but he can dash, which can break some objects. The Aerial Gargoyle can increase altitude in mid-air, whereas all other gargoyles are unable to do that. Along with changing forms, you can also get different weapons for regular Firebrand, like this projectile which can be used to smash bricks. You'll collect other items such as permanent life increases, life replenishment, urns, vellum, talismans, and money. There are different shops throughout the world where you can spend your money on different spells and potions. The ginseng potion is the best because it refills all of your life. It's also the most expensive. There are even mini-games that you can play, though some of the locations are hidden. There are 7 stages. Well, 8 if you consider the true ending, and I think all these levels are lots of fun. Most levels have branching paths or some kind of secret area. Certain abilities are required in order to access some of the areas, but I think this was handled well. I enjoy returning to earlier levels to look for things I missed. I just mentioned a true ending. That's right, Demon's Crest has multiple endings. How cool is that? From what I can tell, there are 4, a bad, normal, good, and true ending. If you get the true ending, you unlock the ultimate gargoyle and gain access to the final stage and a true final boss. I won't show any of that footage here, but it's both amazing and hard as fuck. So as you can probably tell, I think highly of this game, though I do have a few nitpicks. Number 1, the only way to exit a level is by drinking a sulfur potion, or by dying and choosing to return to the map. Why can't I just press start, then select? Number 2, some abilities make others obsolete. The only example I have is the Aerial Gargoyle. A great gargoyle, yeah, but you can also get a weapon for regular Firebrand which shoots platforms so you can reach great heights. But if you obtain the Aerial Gargoyle first, like I did, this weapon seems useless. Also, as regular Firebrand, you get a weapon that allows you to cover spikes on walls so you can climb better. Again, no need for this if you have the Aerial Gargoyle. It is possible that I'm missing something, and if so, please let me know in the comments. And that's Demon's Crest. I love the macabre atmosphere that the music and the graphics help to create. This game controls well and has decent replay value thanks to the multiple endings, and is also quite challenging. I give Demon's Crest for the Super Nintendo an 8 out of 10. What's your opinion of Demon's Crest, and also, which gargoyle do you think looks the coolest? Thanks so much for watching, please hit like, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Dino City was developed and published by IREM for the Super Nintendo in 1992, and is based off of the film Adventures in Dinosaur City, which I've never seen nor would ever want to see. Dino City is an action platformer with 6 worlds, each with 5 stages. At the end of a world, there's a boss fight, and to this game's credit, most boss fights are actually pretty interesting. The first boss, for example, has you punching blocks, and upon shattering, the shrapnel causes damage to said boss. At the end of most stages, there are 2 doors. The only difference between these doors is which level follows, so you actually kind of get to pick your route, although first time playing, you won't know which door leads to which stage. That being said, you don't get to skip stages, you only get to somewhat pick the order in which you play them. Also, sometimes these doors lead to a bonus stage, where you can collect hearts, 1-ups, and eggs. By the way, collect 50 eggs and you'll earn a 1-up. You get to choose between 2 different teams, Timmy and Rex, or Jamie and Tops. Both are very similar, except Rex has a punch and Tops has a projectile attack. Timmy and Jamie are the same and both have a gun which can freeze enemies. Throughout the game, you can switch between the human or the dinosaur. Sometimes this is actually used to solve problems. For example, here I switched to Timmy to walk underneath this skull and jump on top to lower it, making room for Rex. I think this is a really interesting buddy system mechanic, but sadly it isn't used a whole lot, which brings me to the level design. Don't get me wrong, there are some great ideas here and there's a decent amount of variety. There are roller coaster levels, surfing levels, really neat boss fights, and so on, but nothing is ever fully realized, like the buddy system I just mentioned. In fact, the further in this game you get, the worse the level design becomes. Instead of increasing the difficulty by having the player utilize all their abilities in interesting ways, they just make levels more cheap and give you less room to screw up. Sometimes enemies just fall on you, or platforms just go away. Sometimes sometimes enemies appear so fast that you don't have enough time to react. For example, here I see a bird. Shit, I don't know what to do. Should I just shoot him or jump on him? If I shoot, I could miss. Okay, I'll jump on him. Bullshit! Now, I slowly walked you through that scenario, but in real time, it's more like, jump, fuck! On top of that, some enemies seem to take forever to kill. Okay, so the level design is not the best, but the real problem with this game are the controls. In theory, they're fine. B is jump, Y is attack, and R allows you to switch between the human and the dinosaur. But man, these controls are laggy. This game often eats your inputs. There were so many times where I pressed B or Y to jump or attack, and nothing happened. How did they not figure this out during playtesting? Not only are the controls laggy, but the frame rate often slows to a crawl, especially in what I call the Reznor stages. Here you have to travel along this thing while it moves along slowly. It's actually a pretty neat effect, but man does it cause lag. There are 3 Reznor stages, and this thing gets bigger each time you see it, which causes even more slowdown. Okay, I know I just shit on this game pretty hard, but I don't think this game is bad. In fact, I was pleasantly surprised. I picked this game up for $8 at my local game store, and with a cover like this, I really didn't know what to expect. The graphics here are decent. They're not gonna blow you away or anything, but there are neat little touches, like when the game transitions from morning to afternoon, then again to night. I like the fact that there are 2 playable characters, each with slight differences. This gives replay value because you're gonna play the game a little differently with Rex than you would Tops. I would recommend choosing Tops if this is your first time playing. It's a little easier with the projectile attack. Dino City doesn't have a battery save, but it does have a password, and I think they did a good job with the password. Yes, it is kind of long, but I love that they changed the look of some of the letters. For example, the O looks like this. I assume this was to prevent confusion, as an O looks a lot like a 0. What a great idea. Props to IREM for that. I should also mention that Dino City has a 2-player alternating mode. So that's Dino City. It's a neat little action platformer, with some glaring flaws. If you can handle the flaws, I would recommend it. You can probably beat it within an hour or so, even with these flaws considered. Overall, I give Dino City a 6 out of 10. Have you guys played this game? Let me know down in the comments below. This isn't a game that I often hear people talk about, so I am curious. I want to thank you again so much for watching. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Please make sure to hit that bell notification and that like button, and I'll see you next time. Dragon View was published by Kemco in 1994 and is also referred to as Draken 2, and in Japan it was called Super Draken. So I guess this is a sequel to Draken. And yes, I've beat this game, and we'll talk about it one day, but for now, let's just, talk about Dragon View. Being that this is a sequel to Draken, there are some similarities, though Dragon View has improved on many things, so you might like this game even if you hated Draken. You play as a lone warrior who's on a quest to kill some guy for some reason and save somebody. Who fucking cares? When in the overworld, you traverse a pseudo 3D world and say what you want, but I really like this. When you're in town or a dungeon, it switches to a 2D mode where you explore, talk to people, kill monsters, and solve puzzles. Though the look of the 3D world is primitive, I think it looks great for a Super Nintendo game. When you're in towns and dungeons, again, the graphics are a pleasure. The controls work great, both in 3D and 2D environments. While this game is linear, you have the option to explore the overworld at your leisure. You may discover hidden areas which can lead to finding HP, MP, weapons, and armor upgrades, along with various items. You may also stumble into areas where the monsters are much stronger than you. To assist with your exploration, you'll have access to maps which are given to you from NPCs. As I said, this is an action RPG. Thankfully, grinding in this game isn't tedious like in some other RPGs. Leveling up doesn't take too long to achieve, and slapping the shit out of stuff with your sword is fun. While on the overworld, you'll encounter battle sequences when you come in contact with mist, though it's easy to avoid. Along with your sword, you'll find a Hausa, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is the only other weapon in the game. Along with your melee weapons, you'll obtain 3 different rings: fire, ice, and lightning. These give you access to magic attacks. When you use magic, it costs MP, which are represented by these stars. Your weapons, armor, and rings can all be upgraded. You do this by finding upgrades in chests scattered throughout the world. If at any point in the game you realize you've missed something, whether it be an item or an upgrade, it's never too late to go back and get it. The world in Dragon View is quite large, and thankfully there are warp points to help you get around faster. This is particularly nice for those moments when you do realize you've missed something. There are 2 forms of currency. The primary currency is called Jade. These appear as colored jewels. Blue is worth 5, pink is worth 10, and yellow is worth 20. You can spend these in stores which are located in towns and sometimes in dungeons. You can buy bombs, arrows, potions, and MP stars. The second, and less obvious, is fruit. That's right, you'll come across merchants who only accept fruit as payment. I'm not sure how many types of fruit there are in the game, but I only found apples and they fall from trees. Throughout your travels, you'll encounter many different environments such as grassy plains, a desert, a swamp, a snowfield, a rainy valley, and a dark and spooky field. The music here is okay. I really like the theme in the snowfield. But otherwise the music is just kind of average. And that's all there really is to say about Dragon View. I think it's a fun, accessible RPG, and the 3D world really helps it stand out from its contemporaries. Minus Draken. It's not a very hard game, nor a very long one. It took me about 12 hours to beat it on my first playthrough, and I never got stuck. I give Dragon View a 7 out of 10. Have you guys played Dragon View, and what's your opinion of the 3D world? Because that seems to be a divisive choice for the game. Some people seem to fucking hate it, some people like it. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please like or dislike and leave a comment because it helps your boy out. Keep gaming and we'll see you in the next video. The original title for this game translates to Ganbare Goemon Kira Kira Dochu Boku ga Dancer ni Wata Wake. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to refer to this game as Goemon 4. Goemon 4 was developed and published by Konami for the Super Famicom and released only in Japan in December of 1995. Unfortunately, the Goemon series didn't get as much love in North America as it did in Japan, and that's a real shame because this series is fantastic. Now, before I go on, I will mention that I did in fact play this Super Famicom card on my Super Famicom, which means that this is in Japanese. The game is mostly playable without needing to know Japanese, but there are a few parts where if you can't read, you'll probably be stuck. This usually happens within the towns. Sometimes you'll need to talk to a particular NPC and select the right option and then do what they say. Because I played this game in Japanese, I would actually follow along with a video with an English translation patch. By doing that, I was able to read all the important parts that I had to read. It worked perfectly fine, like I did 100% this game. However, if you want to play this, I think getting a ROM with an English translation patch is probably the best way to go. Anyway, let's move on. Goemon 4 is an action platformer where you take control of Goemon and his crew while you explore different planets with the goal of taking down the commander. Each planet is presented with an overworld map where you can choose your stage. In each world, there are always 1 or 2 towns, a couple stages, and finally a castle. The castles are the longest stages and always end with the boss fight with Impact, Goemon's Megazord. More on this later. The controls, graphics, sound effects, and music are all top-notch. The controls are tight and responsive. The graphics are detailed and colorful and really bring together a unique setting, while the music really does breathe life into this world. I love Japanese culture, and this music really puts me in that frame of mind. Check it out. Each character has a long and short-range weapon, along with unique abilities. Goemon has his signature chain pipe, which allows him to swing around using certain blocks. Sasuke can climb walls, Yae can turn into a mermaid, while Ebisumaru can dance like a ballerina, which allows him to break certain blocks. On top of this, each character has different strength and speed stats. Ebisumaru appears to be the strongest, while Sasuke seems to be the fastest. Each character has their own planet to explore. It's not until you've completed all the planets that you can bring other characters to other worlds. Once you unlock this ability, pressing select will cycle through all 4 characters. For example, your first time in this stage, you may notice that Ebisumaru can't seem to swim below the surface of the water. You might ask, how can this be? There's probably all kinds of stuff hidden in the water. Well, you'd be right in asking that question, but it's not until you can switch to Yae that you can turn into the mermaid and explore the water. By the way, if at any point you get frustrated and want a change of scenery, you can always fly to the other other planets and play different stages. You don't have to beat planets to move on to other planets. I was really impressed with the level themes and stage designs. No two levels look the same, and it's more than just running to the right. For example, the castle in Goemon's world has a soccer and baseball theme. At the beginning, you'll be platforming across soccer balls before fighting a soccer ball mini-boss. In the next segment, you'll see that the arrows point you to the right, but you'll also notice an arrow pointing down. It seems you can't go down yet, so head to the right. If you make sure to touch the first, second, and third bases, by the time you loop back around, the door on the ground will now be open. If you miss any of the bases, you'll have to run through this part again. Shortly after that, you'll be running from a huge robot while dodging enemies and obstacles. This game is just so much fun, and I always looked forward to seeing what else was waiting for me. Because of this, I'll try not to spoil too much of the game for you. The towns and villages are where you can talk to NPCs, use the inn, buy items, and save your game. No password system here either, just a battery backup. One thing I should mention is that Goemon 4 is actually a really tough game, so make sure to buy rice balls and armor, especially before starting a castle. Thankfully, this game gives you unlimited continues. If you get a game over, you can still start at the checkpoint of the most recently played stage. Thank God. Goemon 4 is tough because oftentimes you'll need to figure out a pattern, and screwing up usually means dying. Check this stage out. You need to platform across guys who are swinging baseball bats. You need to jump on their bat when they swing at a baseball. It's tricky to nail the timing, but again, you can try as many times as you'd like. After all, there is a checkpoint right here before you begin. This brings me to the major boss fights featuring Impact, Goemon's Megazord. These fights are all unique and are usually some sort of puzzle or minigame. In keeping with my not spoiling anything promise, I'll only show you this boss fight. Before the fight begins, you're given instructions on what to do. Now you can see why I needed the English walkthrough video. This fight is all based on timing. The boss, who's far above you, will bungee jump off a perch with a sword in both hands. You need to press up just a moment before he makes contact in order to catch his sword. Then mash A and B alternating to throw him back at his perch. It sounds pretty simple, but you can only miss twice, and you have to continue to do this until his health runs out. On this playthrough, I actually beat him on my first try, but the first time I played this fight took forever. So this boss fight is really a mini game, but again, you have unlimited tries. If you get a game over, you will not have to replay any portion of the castle. You just jump right back into the Impact fight. I absolutely loved these fights. I found them to be really fun. Goemon 4 is also a 2-player game, but as usual, I played this alone. Overall, this game is amazing and you need to check it out. I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed the game, and it's now in my regular rotation of Super Nintendo games. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Home Improvement Power Tool Pursuit was developed by a studio named Imagineering and published by Absolute Entertainment for the Super Nintendo in 1994. It's based off of the family sitcom Home Improvement, starring Tim Allen. The game opens up with Tim Taylor and Al Borland on the set of Tool Time, you know, the show within the show, and they're about to show off a new line of Binford tools. As it turns out, Tim discovers a note that basically just says, "We stole your tools, come and get them." You play as Tim while searching the sets of other TV shows for the missing power tools. Every single level of this game has you tracking down a number of crates. Once you've collected the final crate, the level is over. More on this later. Now, this game is pretty strongly disliked, but why is that? Is this game as bad as everyone says? Honestly, no. But it's not good either. I think most people hate the idea of this game more than the game itself. I think the biggest mystery is who thought that Home Improvement, the TV show, would make a good video game. I mean, yeah, we got tons of movie/cartoon related games, but cartoons have the potential to make good video game fodder. But a live-action sitcom about family and power tools? Yeah, it makes you scratch your head. It's like if you went to a restaurant and on the menu you saw a ketchup and garlic milkshake.
That sounds good. I'll have that.
I think your first question would be, who in their right mind thought that this was a good match? Well, anyway, as I said before, you play as Tim. Off the bat, you have a few power tools at your disposal. You have a grapple hook to help you reach higher places, a jackhammer to help dig holes and reach lower areas, and a regular hammer. You can pick up other tools along the way, like a nail gun, flamethrower, and chainsaw, just to name a few. If you collect more of the same tool in a row, you'll get a stronger version of that tool. Keep in mind that these weapons are temporary. For example,
example, if you have the chainsaw, then pick up the nail gun, you'll lose the chainsaw. I think the game mechanics and controls work pretty well, but because there's a lot you can do, it takes a bit of time to get used to. I think the graphics are also pretty well done and the animations are nice and smooth. The music, on the other hand, it's just stock. So the graphics and the mechanics are not bad, but that's about where the positives end. This game has a slew of problems and I don't even know where to begin. Home Improvement has 4 main levels, all split into 4 stages, plus boss stages. Unfortunately, all the stages are generic TV sets, all with the exact same goal: collect a certain number of crates. I am not kidding when I say that every single level in this game is exactly the same. The only things that change are the aesthetic and the level layouts. That's it. I guess the good thing is that if during the first level you've decided that you don't like this game, you can just shut it off because it doesn't get any better and you're really not missing anything. After only a few minutes of gameplay, you've seen just about everything this game has to offer. Now, each level is really big. It's extremely easy to get lost. So often I found myself walking in circles. There were quite a few other Super Nintendo games with similar level structure like Wayne's World or The Adventures of Dr. Franken. And, well, we know how good those games are. But it's not just that these levels are big and non-linear. The real problem is that these levels are not fun, not intuitive, confusing, repetitive, and dull. Those are the exact ingredients required to make a low-quality game. Another big issue with Home Improvement is that it's really hard, and for all the wrong reasons. The enemies have awful placement and terrible movement. Like, so often, little tiny bugs will cause you such a freaking headache. These flying dinosaurs move frantically while dropping shit on you. Sometimes you land on enemies when you jump from a ledge. It's so easy to get your ass bent over by stupid inconvenient monsters. You know how like in good video games, monsters are fun to kill? Well, in Home Improvement, they're nothing more than a nuisance. All you just want to do is find the crates, but these enemies are constantly in the way. The good news is that when you kill enemies, they stay dead. Unless you die, then they all come back. By the way, your health works like how it does in Sonic the Hedgehog. Get hit with no nuts and bolts and you're dead. If and when you do take damage, you'll have a small window to recover those nuts and bolts. Oh, and you only have 3 lives, 0 continues, and no password system. Good luck. So that's Home Improvement. I really can't recommend this game. It's only really good for the novelty of being, well, such a weird game. I do admit that it's better than other games like Wayne's World or Dr. Franken, but with bland and boring level design, overall I give Home Improvement a 4 out of 10. So yeah, although it's not a good game at all, I don't think it's as bad as everyone seems to think that it is. Guys, I want to thank you again so much for watching. Please hit that like button, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, that bell notification, and I'll see you next week. The Super Nintendo version of Hook was developed by Yuki Ote and published by Sony ImageSoft in 1992. Hook was also ported to many other consoles like the NES, Genesis, Sega CD, and Sega Game Gear. I haven't played all the ports of Hook, but I do have the Genesis version, which seems to be very similar to the Super Nintendo version, except on Genesis, it looks and sounds worse. Hook is based off of the live-action movie of the same name, which is based off of the story of Peter Pan. Because of this, I always passed on this game, but let me tell you, I was wrong to do so. This game is fantastic. Now, I have not seen the movie, so I'm not going to make comparisons throughout my review. I only like horror movies. I don't watch this kind of shit, but I will play video games based off of movies I'd never watch. You know, as long as the games are good. I'll be honest, at first I was a little thrown off with how slow moving this game is. I found it kinda difficult, but after about 10 minutes I got the hang of it and I couldn't put it down. I beat it on my first playthrough. And yes, it's not a hard game by any means. Sadly, there's not an options menu, so if you do find this game too easy, or too difficult, you can't change the difficulty. But that aside, I think the challenge is just right. Starting a new game, the first thing you'll notice is how great the graphics are. The character sprites, the levels, and the backgrounds all look so good. The level themes are also quite varied. You'll be exploring caves, icy landscapes, forests, and just about everything else you'd expect. Most of the levels are large and promote exploration, but some other levels will auto-scroll and be more action-focused. This is important. When too many levels look and feel the same, it can lead to a feeling of boredom. Thankfully, that's not the case with Hook. The level design is great. You play as Peter Pan and your main weapon is a dagger. After you beat the first level, you'll unlock a sword which has a longer range and also shoots a projectile. The only problem is you'll drop the sword as soon as you take damage. The good news is that you can find another sword, although I didn't find many during my playthrough. The majority of my time with this game was with the dagger. I wasn't good enough to keep the sword for any substantial amount of time. Your health meter is represented by these green leaves. Cherries will refill some of your life, while apples will refill all your life. To permanently increase your health meter, you can find green leaves, but they're well hidden and much harder to find. You'll also collect jewelry. These just give you points, but once you've hit 100,000, you'll gain an extra life. Peter has the ability to fly for a short time. To do this, you'll have to find Tinkerbell to fill your fly meter. While it's not immediately obvious, you can run by holding Y, which is also the attack button. While flying, holding Y allows you to fly faster. At the end of most levels, you'll fight a boss. Although they're not too hard, some require problem solving. For example, the boss at the end of the dark cave level, I couldn't figure out what to do on my first playthrough. I died a whole bunch, but eventually I figured it out. I should also mention that the music is also really well done. So that's Hook. I just picked it off my shelf recently one afternoon and I was pleasantly surprised. The only nitpicks I have are that you can't change the difficulty and how slow moving the game is. Overall, I give Hook an 8 out of 10. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please hit like. If you're new here, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. King of Dragons is a medieval beat-em-up developed by Capcom and published in 1991 for the arcades, and ported to Super Nintendo in 1994. Now, in this review, we're taking a look at the Super Nintendo version, not the arcade. Although they're very similar, but not quite. So the story goes a little something like this. Gildas, a large red dragon, is terrorizing the kingdom of Malice. The king sent an army to kill the dragon, yet instead, every troop was murdered. Word on the street is that some of the troops were decapitated and their heads were shoved up their butts. Would you like to die that way? I didn't think so. Beyond desperate, the king sought help from the wizard named Gwendon. Gwendon explained that he could put a sleep spell on Gildas, but it would only last 1 year, and when he would awake, he would be stronger than he was before. Desperate, the king said yes. The king had sent hundreds of knights to slay Gildas as he slept, yet none of them returned. At the brink of destruction, a new band of adventurers rise and plan to kill Gildas and save the land. And that is where our adventure begins. There are 5 playable characters and 16 levels. During the game, you will find equipment which will boost your stats, though the equipment is different depending on which character you're playing as. Also, you'll level up through the game, and this is achieved by reaching certain point milestones. When you level up this way, your HP and the strength of your magic also increases. You earn points by collecting gold, jewels, various treasures, attacking and killing enemies. To regain HP, you'll collect mostly food, and it's usually fruit, and there are some potions. Each character can use magic. This is done by pressing X, although it does drain a little bit of health, but that's common for beat-em-ups. Each character is a little different from the others, and they all have their own pros and cons. The elf is the quickest character and has the best range, as his weapon is the bow. This can be a huge advantage because you're able to shoot enemies from afar, therefore making some bosses much easier. Also, he's small, which means his hitbox is smaller, which means enemies have a harder time hitting him. The elf, however, does less damage to enemies, and his defense is the worst in the game. He also can't equip a shield, which means his defense never increases. The equipment the elf will acquire are bows and arrows. The bows will increase the fire rate, and the arrows increase the attack strength. Moving on to the wizard. First off, the wizard's magic is the strongest in the game, obviously. He has the second best range, and by the third upgrade, he becomes the strongest in the game as his damage and speed ratio is better than the others. So the wizard is like the best character in the game, but he does have flaws. Again, no shield, but the amulet upgrades will increase his defense. Fun fact, the wizard is primarily used in speedruns. The fighter is pretty strong in most areas. He's faster than everyone else, except the elf, and gains HP the quickest. He has the second strongest attack and has good defense. By having a shield, you may block attacks. You can actually select to use the shield manually, but I suck at using it, so I usually just leave it to auto. This is done in the options menu at the beginning of the game. Unfortunately, the fighter has the weakest magic. The cleric has a good attack, good magic, and the best defense. The cleric also has the highest attack speed and levels up the fastest. On the other hand, the cleric is the biggest, making him an easier target. Also, his jump is the worst. So the thing with jumping, when you jump,
you're harder to hit. You're not invincible, but it's a good strategy to use if you want to avoid taking damage. But with the cleric, he has a poor jump and he has a huge hitbox, so he ends up being a pretty good target for enemies. But he does have a lot of HP, the best defense, and a shield, so it kind of balances there. Overall, he's great. If you're new to King of Dragons, I highly recommend using the cleric. So the dwarf is the smallest character and has the best jump, so therefore he has a small hitbox and he spends the most time in the air. He's not very strong, has weak magic, and has the worst range in the game. Luckily though, he does have a shield. So those are the characters. I think they're all fun to use, and having so many playable characters really gives this game good replay value. Once you've selected your character, you'll begin traveling through the Kingdom of Malice. There are 16 levels, and that's a lot for a beat 'em up. The trade-off here is that those levels are a lot shorter. As far as graphics, they look great. There are so many different locations. You'll venture through plains, mountains, forests, beaches, ruins, caves, creeks, towers, and castles. The enemy variety is also huge. You'll fight orcs, wolfmen, minotaurs, mummies, wraiths, lizardmen, skeletons, slime, mimics, cyclopses, and of course dragons. This game is just packed to the brim with things to kill, places to see, and characters to play as. I should also mention that the music for this game is just phenomenal. I love this game's music. Throughout your journey, you'll occasionally run across non-playable characters who will provide you with story details. Oh look, a tree. You know, I love talking trees. They're always just so wise and sophisticated, and they possess a level of knowledge which is invaluable to the player. I also love hearing, well in this case reading, Old English. You know, take the Great Deku Tree for example. That tree is the smartest character in Ocarina of Time. Right off the bat he knows what Ganondorf is up to and explains the dire situation to Link. Link is informed of his quest and it really sets the mood. Oh, thanks, buddy. I really didn't think an ancient tree would say something like that. Yeah, this tree's not that sophisticated. Sorry. Check this out. So you kill this boss, and then this guy shows up after the fact. Where the f*** were you before? I could have used you during the boss. He's probably f***ing hiding behind some crates, like, I gotta talk to him, but I gotta wait till he kills that guy. I really like the Great Dragonian. I like his design, and I love that shield. Put a huge f***ing spike on the front. He looks like, Goldar, Power Rangers. That's who he looks like. He looks like Goldar. Between levels, you're shown a world map. I love this world map. When I was a kid playing this, I had an active imagination, and this map always had me wondering about the possibilities in this game, where the next level would take place, and what enemies I'd face off against. Although I've seen everything this game has to offer, I still think this map screen is awesome. Even the names of the levels can trigger imagination. Treasure in an old castle. Fan theory. I got a fan theory. Check this out. This tree here is actually the Great Deku Tree. Like before he went to college. And that is Link. Dude, this is a Zelda game. This is a Zelda beat 'em up game. That's what this is. I mean, let's be real. This is before Link got the sword. He's got the fairy bow. He's got the green tunic on. He meets the Deku Tree. So after all that praise, does this game have any downfalls? Well, yes. First off, this game can be pretty challenging. Admittedly, I'm a casual player of this game. I played this game on easy for years until I finally beat it. The gameplay footage that you're seeing now in this video is played on normal. There's also a hard difficulty, but I'm not ready for that yet. Check this out. This fight here, look at this. Yeah, that was annoying. Although sometimes you can get lucky and you can pull shit off like this. Also, sometimes the frame rate will suffer when there are too many enemies on screen. Like the Hydra fight, for example, can have a lot of slowdown. And really, that's it for downfalls, and really even those are just kind of nitpicks more than actual major criticism. Before I wrap up, I do just want to give you guys a few tips to help you with King of Dragons should you want to play it. First off, there are credit tokens that you can find throughout the game. As far as I can tell, there are only 3, and they're not always in the same location, but they always seem to be hidden behind the foreground like this. So when you're playing, make sure to look out for these because they're a huge help. Now, I feel like I don't need to mention this, but I will anyway. When you get frozen or trapped in slime, mash buttons to break free, otherwise your health will drain. You'd be surprised with how many of my friends come over and play this and they get trapped like this and they do this. What's happening? Why are they doing that? You're supposed to mash to break free. Well, I didn't know I had to do that. Yeah. So, yeah, you can do that. Now, if you've played this game so much and you're really good at it and you just want an extra challenge, you can actually choose to not pick up the weapon upgrades. And finally, this game is 2-player. You have to choose separate characters, although with the cheat code, you may both select the same character. While the Capcom logo is present, press down, right shoulder button, up, left shoulder button, Y, B, X, A. If you did it properly, the screen will flash blue. So that's King of Dragons for Super Nintendo. It looks great, it sounds great, there's tons of enemies, tons of levels, 5 playable characters which all add their own flavor, so to speak, and overall it's just a really fun game. There is a bit of slowdown at times and the game can be pretty challenging, but overall, I give King of Dragons a 9 out of 10. Now, I just want to give a shout out to Nick P. He's a really good buddy of mine, and he's played this game with me for years and years, and the first time I ever beat King of Dragons was actually with him, so shout outs to you. Thank you all for watching. Please hit subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next review. There are many beat-em-ups for the Super Nintendo, but there are only 3 that are medieval fantasy-based: the King of Dragons, Knights of the Round, and Legend. Trying to find information for my review was pretty tough because there just isn't much out there. A lot of my Google searches led me to The Legend of Zelda, which obviously is not what we're looking at. Legend was released for the Super Nintendo in 1994. You play as a guy as you fight through 7 stages attempting to kill someone named Clovis because you have to save the kingdom. If you have a friend, you can play 2-player co-op. So I'm just going to split this review right down the middle. I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, and I'll give you my conclusion at the end. The reason I'm going to do it this way is because it's a beat 'em up. You know what to expect. I don't need to act like you've never played a beat 'em up. Okay, so starting off with the good. This game looks fantastic. Now, I love medieval themes, and this game nails it. The backgrounds, foregrounds, and character sprites are all super well done. The stages have a lot of environmental variation and weather effects like fog or rain. In stage 1, you start on what looks to be a countryside, then you make your way through a forest, across a bridge, and through a swamp. The visuals are this game's greatest strength. A few levels in, there's a stage where you have to fight an enemy who's trying to capture you. If you're captured, you're taken to a whole other level. If you kill the enemy, you can avoid the extra level. I think that's so cool. I can see how this might be annoying if you're looking to beat the game as fast as you can, but either way, it's a really neat touch. Between some levels, you can play a bonus round. Sometimes it's just to collect as much gold as you can within the time limit, and other times it's to open as many chests as you can within the time limit. Throughout the game, enemies drop keys, so how many chests you can open depends on how many keys you have. Chests may contain more keys, health restoring food, 1-ups, gold, or magic jars. In a lot of beat-em-ups, you have a special attack which drains health. You have that in Legend as well, but on top of that you have magic. It costs 2 magic jars to cast 1 spell, and you can hold up to 9 jars. Thankfully, enemies drop these somewhat frequently. Other beat-em-ups can be frustrating because you can't effectively block, but in Legend, pressing L or R, you can use your shield, which can be a great help if you know how to use it. Okay, moving on to the bad. The music is fucking shit. The first bunch of stages have the exact same song, and the song isn't even that good. This is really unfortunate because great music can oftentimes make a bland game decent. I mentioned that this game has co-op, but unfortunately there's only one playable character. Now that's really shitty, especially when compared to this game's contemporaries like King of Dragons, which has 5 different playable characters. When you play 2 players, you both play as a different color of the same character. Player 2 wields an axe, but it doesn't function any differently than the sword. At least you can pick whichever color you want out of red, green, or blue, at least the first player can. If you're gonna play Legend, you better have a lot of patience, because this game moves very slowly. Walking and swinging your sword takes forever, and the screen moves at a snail's pace. In some levels, there are times where you'll be walking through a swamp or some kind of rough terrain and you'll move even slower. Please kill me. Now, I know I spoke highly of the visuals, but there are a few flaws. Firstly, a lot of the stages look the same. Not all of them, but you do see a lot of the same set pieces. Also, you see a lot of the same enemies as well. Some levels, even though they look fine, are way too dark. The other problem I have is with the foreground graphics. When I first started playing this, I thought the foreground objects looked cool and helped to add to the atmosphere, but soon enough, I found them annoying as shit. Get the hell out of my way, I can't see! Lastly, and this might be my biggest gripe, Legend doesn't have a lot of depth. Do you know how with other beat-em-ups, the more you play them, the more you realize that there's more than meets the eye? Like the first time you play Turtles in Time or Streets of Rage, you just kinda walk and punch things until you die. Eventually though, you start to see how the game works and that there's a lot more going on than just walking and punching. Well, sadly, not with Legend. What you see is what you get. You just walk slowly and hit things with the sword. Yeah, you can jump kick and you can also do a slash attack, but these all seem to do the same amount of damage. The special attack and magic attack help, but they're limited. Seems like your best bet is to just jump kick everything. That's the safest, but it's also not very fun. If you decide to attack with your weapon, you're at a greater risk of taking damage unless you know when to block with the shield. Still though, I'd say it's safer to jump kick everything. Ultimately, the fighting in Legend is just kind of boring, and this is a beat 'em up, so that means 100% of the gameplay is fighting. So because the fighting is bland, the movement is slow, the music is shit, and the character roster is, limited to say the least, I really can't recommend Legend despite its great visuals. Overall, Legend gets a 5 out of 10. So yeah, I'm not too happy that this game kinda stinks. I was really excited to come home and play this when I bought it. By the way, it was pretty expensive, but there's a reason no one talks about this game. Honestly, you're better off sticking with King of Dragons or even Knights of the Round. If you know something about this game that I've missed, please throw it down in the comments below. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Magic Sword was developed and published by Capcom for the arcade in 1990. It was later ported to the Super Nintendo in 1992. The story here is nothing you haven't seen. There's some dude that you have to kill because he's bad and you're good. That's it. You play as the fearless warrior Mohan. Your objective is to destroy the black orb, which sits at the top of a 50-floor tower. So you climb your way to the top while you loot chests and fight through an army of monsters, and thankfully, it's a lot of fun. Magic Sword is an arcade-style 2D hack and slash. Upon starting a new game, you're able to choose a floor to start on. I'm not really too sure why this is, but if you want a longer and tougher playthrough, start at the beginning. Your main weapon is, of course, the sword. You get sword upgrades when you beat bosses. Be careful though, when you take damage, Mohan drops his sword and you'll have to pick it back up, which I find kind of annoying. There's also a shit ton of items to find. Now I'm not going to list every one, but a lot of items temporarily boost your stats, like the gauntlet, which raises attack power, and the magic potion, which increases your magic. Other items provide a different type of benefit, like the red heart, which allows your ally to level up. Keys, for example, are common but necessary to open locked doors because so often your companions are locked inside. Speaking of, there are a total of 8 companions who all have their advantages and disadvantages, and none of them are bad, they all have some form of a purpose. For example, the thief can locate traps and hidden chests. Now, if you don't have the thief, no worries because there are plenty of items that will do that for you as well. My favorite companion, however, is the Lizard Man. He starts out as an enemy, but if you have a diamond ring, he'll join you. Keep in mind that you can only have one companion at a time, and they're controlled completely by the computer. They also have their own life bar, and if they die, you'll have to find a new companion. Every time you finish a floor, there's a short cutscene and some text to read. Sometimes the text means abso-fucking-lutely nothing, and sometimes it gives you hints. The controls are simple. B is jump, Y is attack, and X is a clear-all attack, and of course, like typical arcade games, this drains a bit of your health. If you press up while jumping, you'll jump higher. This is required to make it onto some ledges. Down here, there's a meter. When this is fully charged, your attack will shoot magic. I guess that's why it's called Magic Sword. The graphics here are pretty good, both the sprites and environments. Some of the floors do start to feel samey after a while, but they're all still nice to look at. The music here is okay, with a few standout tracks. So yeah, Magic Sword is a pretty fun pick up and play game, but it's not perfect. At times, the frame rate can drop pretty significantly, which might be why this is strictly a single player game. The arcade version is capable of 2 players, but unfortunately not the Super Nintendo version. It's a real shame because I think this would have been lots of fun with 2 players. Either way, I would recommend that you check this game out. I think it's pretty fun, and that's why I give Magic Sword a 7 out of 10. Guys, I want to thank you again so much for watching. Please hit like. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next week. Mickey to Donald Magical Adventure 3 was developed and published by Capcom for the Super Famicom in 1995. Unfortunately, this game was not released in North America until 2004 for the Game Boy Advance, so 9 years later. I'm just gonna call this game Magical Quest 3. I was able to track down the cart for Super Famicom, so I am actually playing this legit card on my legit Super Famicom. Let's get into it. The Magical Quest 3 is very similar to the previous 2 games, the Magical Quest and the Great Circus Mystery. This, again, is a 2D action platformer with 2-player co-op. Like the other games, this introduces new suits: the Knight suit, the Tree Climber suit, and the Magician suit. The Magical Quest 3 has some welcomed improvements. The first and biggest change is that you can play as either Mickey or Donald. Not only that, but the outfits differ between them. For example, the Knight suit for Mickey comes with a javelin which you can use to attack forward, down, and up. If you press and hold down, you'll be able to block forthcoming projectiles with your shield. If you go into the water, however, you'll sink, as this armor is heavy. Donald, on the other hand, has a wooden barrel and an iron pot for a helmet. His weapon is a hammer which attacks in an arc. If you press down, Donald will hide in the barrel and effectively block projectiles from all angles. He can also roll while in the barrel. Instead of sinking, like Mickey, Donald's outfit allows him to float while in the water. The Tree Climber suit, or Lumberjack suit, is mostly the same between both characters, although Mickey has a rope which he throws further and straight forward. Donald uses a belt, and like the hammer, swings it in an arc. With this suit, you can climb trees, slide down vines and rope, and pull certain objects. Finally, in the Magician suit, Mickey is dressed like a red Spike McFang, and quickly shoots magic birds. Donald has a magic lamp which takes a small charge before shooting, although you can press and hold the button and just let it go when you want. Also, while holding a shot, Mickey can actually use the genie hand as a platform to get to higher places. How cool is that? In Magical Quest 3, there are 7 levels, as opposed to the other games having only 6 levels. So this game is slightly longer, though you can still probably beat it in an hour or so. There is a password system in case you don't want to beat it in one sitting. There's a varied assortment of levels. We have the Town Harvest Fair, Fungi Forest, Sandy Mountain, the Airship, Shell Ocean, Snowflake Mountain, and finally King Pete's Palace. This game is fun to play, and these levels are perfectly designed for 2-player co-op and your suit's abilities. Every stage has a boss and a mini-boss. The only boss I didn't like is this asshole. He's not hard, just annoying. The only way I know to beat him is by deflecting his cannonballs back at him. This means you have to wait for him to shoot, and sometimes he takes a while. He just spends time hopping around and jerking off his cannons. Come on, asshole, we're all waiting here. Oh, for fuck's sake. Come on! Well, it's about fucking time. Anyway, there are plenty of secrets that are worth going out of your way to find. You may find 1-ups, coins, fruit, hearts, heart containers, shops, and even mini-games. I also really enjoyed the presentation of the levels. For example, in the airship level, you don't just start on the airship. You actually have to make your way onto the airship, and after you beat the boss, you jump off. First time I played Shell Ocean, I was like, ugh, a water level. But I was pleasantly surprised. The underwater part is not very long, as eventually you'll swim into a huge shell which you can explore on foot. The boss fight takes place outside and on top of said shell. I even noticed smaller details, like while in Snowflake Mountain, in the background you can see Pete's palace. The further along the stage you go, the closer you get to the palace. After you beat Snowflake Mountain and you're in Pete's palace, if you look out the window, you can see the snow-covered mountains from the previous level. It shows consistency. It's just a small, silly detail, but I took joy in noticing. The graphics here are great and the animations are well done. I think Donald getting pissed off is hilarious. More often than not, Disney games tend to have strong visuals. The music, however, is average. It's not bad, it's just not memorable. The controls are good and are mostly the same as the previous two games, though I noticed something a little odd. See, if you're walking and then suddenly change directions, you'll see this animation as your character turns. Now that's completely normal. In this game though, you actually can't jump during that animation. At first I just noticed that sometimes my character wouldn't jump when I pressed B. I thought maybe it was my controller, so I changed controllers, but it continued to happen. That's when I noticed it only happens once you've changed directions and this animation's on screen. I could not remember that happening to me in the other two games, so I checked. And no, it does not occur in the other two games. So why this game? It's not a big deal, but there were a few times where I took damage or died because of this. And that's the Magical Quest 3, or Mickey to Donald Magical Adventure 3. This is the biggest of the three games with more levels and a stronger replay value with the two-player co-op and the variation between characters. I give the Magical Quest 3 an 8 out of 10. Which of the three Magical Quest games is your favorite? Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe because I have a lot more content coming, and I'll see you in the next video.
Mickey's Ultimate Challenge was developed by Designer Software and published by High-Tech Expressions and released for Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Game Boy, Game Gear, and Sega Master System. Today we're talking about the Super Nintendo version. The story opens with Mickey lying in bed while reading. Shortly before falling asleep, Mickey mentions that he wishes he was in a faraway land. As the game begins, Mickey wakes up in a medieval world populated with other typical Disney characters like Donald and Goofy, just to name a few. Mickey's Ultimate Challenge is a puzzle game where you take control of either Mickey or Minnie, the choice is up to you, and your goal is to solve the mystery of the unexplained earthquakes. The game world is very small. The outside of this castle acts as a hub, and the doors you see lead to the puzzle games. As you can see written on the box, there are 5 magical puzzles full of family fun. I played this game alone, in the dark. My family doesn't even know that I have this game. And I'm not going to tell them. Well, let's get into it. It doesn't really matter which order you play these games. Although to play Goofy's game, you'll need to first lower the drawbridge, which requires that you beat Huey, Dewey, and Louie's game first. Other than that, it doesn't matter. The first door I went through led to a game called Sorting Books, where I had to spell out a word by jumping on different books. I'm not really sure where the challenge is though. I just kept jumping on books until a word showed up and well, that was it. The next game is called Moving Potions and just has you pushing potions into a mirror. It appears to take place on a chessboard-like surface. This is really not hard at all. If anything, it's just tedious. Picture matching is a lot like the card game in Super Mario Bros. 3, except in this game, you're on a time limit. It's okay, nothing special. You just have to match 2 pictures at a time. Playing the pipes is another memory game. It's a lot like the Tip-Tups in Banjo-Kazooie. You're given a sequence of which switches to jump on, and each time you're successful, the sequence gets longer and longer. Lastly, there's a game called Guess the Tools. It's kinda like that game Mastermind. You have to guess which tools are in Goofy's toolbox. You have 7 attempts to guess the tools and their order. When you complete a challenge, you'll receive an item. These items are to be given to the other characters, and when you do, they will each give you a magic bean. Once you collect all 5 magic beans, head over to the wishing well. Here is where you plant the magic beans, which then causes a giant beanstalk to grow. After climbing the beanstalk, you'll end up in the clouds where you encounter a sleeping giant. It turns out, this asshole was responsible for the earthquakes. What an inconsiderate piece of shit. Anyway, once you jump on this pedestal, surprise, you have to play one more puzzle, and it's a scrambled picture. After you complete the picture, and in case you couldn't tell, it's an alarm clock, you'll wake the giant, he says thanks, and then poof, you're back in bed. The end. Now you get to watch the credits roll. Fun fact, these credits roll indefinitely. Yeah, they just keep looping. That's weird. Okay, so this game is just a couple puzzles, really. But how does this game hold up, and how well does everything come together? I guess I'll start with the controls, which are okay, I guess. For the most part, it's just walk and jump. Sometimes to make certain selections, you press Y. I found it strange that there are two different jumps. You press A for the regular jump, and B for the extra high jump. I never found a good reason to use the regular jump. What's the point of having two different jumps? In most games, you can control the height of your jump just by how you press the button, but here, there's a different button for each jump. Now this doesn't bring the experience down by any means, it's just kind of weird. Now, there are 3 difficulty settings. The back of the box even tells you. Cake level is grades K to 3, medium is grades 4 to 9, and challenging is grade adults. Now, I played this game on challenging because I'm in grade adult, and it was still really easy. It's not really what I would call the ultimate challenge. This game should have been called Mickey's Less Than Stellar Way to Spend 40 Minutes. While I don't think this is a bad game, I can't really say that it's a good game either. I understand that this was meant for children who enjoy puzzles, but how many times can you play these puzzles before you get bored? I got bored during my first playthrough. A question that I can't answer objectively would be, is this game fun? For me, not really, but maybe you love these types of puzzles, but again, there are only 6 puzzles and nothing more. Also, I think the music fucking stinks. Not necessarily the melodies, more so the sound quality. Check it out. Yeah, not something I want to listen to for very long, but thankfully I didn't have to. There's not really much else to say about this game. If you like these types of puzzles, then give it a try. I want to give my buddy Sean a shout out. Thank you so much for sending me the box and the booklet for this game. Please make sure to check out his channel over at Retro Reminiscence. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, throw a comment down below to let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.
Power Rangers was developed by Natsume and released on the Super Nintendo in 1994. It, of course, is based off of the hit TV show which I grew up watching, and I got this game for Christmas in 1994. Pretty sure it was 1994. Power Rangers is a beat-em-up. Unfortunately, in this game, you can only play as the Red Ranger. On the plus side, you can change his color to yellow, pink, black, or blue. I mean, I am kidding, but what I mean by this is that the other Rangers are just palette swaps of the Red Ranger. So that sucks. I mean, it's not a big deal, it just seems kinda lazy. Another thing that bugs me is that Tommy, the Green Ranger, isn't playable. That sucks because he is my favorite Ranger. Seems kinda lazy. Rather than explain the story, I'll let the game do it. So that's it, paper-thin story, just like the TV show. Seems kinda lazy. There are a total of 7 stages, though the last 2 stages are just boss fights, which take place while you're in the Megazord. The first 5 stages are standard beat-em-up fare, and they all follow the same structure. You start as your character Unmorph, you beat up putties, then you meet the stage boss, you morph, you continue beating up enemies, and finally you fight the boss. All the bosses are from the show. I think. I can't really remember, it's been over like 20 years. It's funny that someone actually thought that this guy looked cool. When you're morphed, you'll have more actions at your disposal. For example, you could do a rapid gut punch, slam enemies into the ground, backflip, wall jump, and of course, use your weapon. The red, black, and yellow rangers use their weapons in a similar way, just a downward slash. The blue ranger twirls his lance and the pink ranger can shoot arrows. It's cool that they're all a little different, but for the most part it doesn't seem to matter much who you pick. You're given the character select menu between each level, so that's nice that you can switch between rangers. Along with beating the shit out of things, there's some platforming thrown in. Sometimes you have to avoid hazards, climb, and wall jump. I mean, they tried to spice this game up, but it still just gets fucking boring. See, the stage design doesn't complement the ranger's abilities well. I think the backflip is cool, but I never found a reason to use it. The wall jump is also cool, but it's only used in a few specific areas. To make things worse, this game is one player only. Seems like a missed opportunity. However, with a code, you can play the Megazord fights with 2 players. I mean, that's cool, but why can't the whole game be 2-player? Seems kinda lazy. There's a password system as well. This game isn't long, but it's nice that you don't have to beat this in one sitting, which you might not want to do, because this game is boring. You can access the password screen from the options menu, and the only other option is to select stereo or mono. I find it interesting, and by interesting I mean lazy, that there's not an option to select your difficulty, you know? Like with other beat-em-ups, you might play them so much that increasing the difficulty can be a fun way to extend the life of the game. Seems like the guys who made this knew how boring it would be and figured that no one would want to play it a second time. Seems kinda lazy. The music here is pretty okay, it represents the show well enough. The graphics are decent, I like the look and locations of the levels. Most character sprites look okay, though I find the unmorphed rangers look off. I mentioned the word lazy quite a few times. Thing is, when I was playing this game and writing the script, many aspects of the game just seemed lazy. So I would write that in the script, and when I was done writing the script, I found that I wrote that quite a few times. This game was made to cash in on the Power Rangers craze. So the developers knew the game didn't really have to be good to sell, it would sell regardless. So what happens? They lazily whip up a Power Rangers beat 'em up. They could have made it 2-player, they could have put more time into the level design, they could have given the Rangers their own sprites, they could have designed other difficulty settings. But why bother, it's gonna sell anyway. And that's the problem with video games based off of another popular media, whether it be a TV show or a movie. You don't need quality to sell your game. So with that all being said, this game is not even close to being the worst TV show video game. I mean, you can do a lot worse. Like, look at this piece of shit. And even with all those cut corners, this really isn't a bad game. The music and graphics are okay, it's kind of fun beating up things. It's really not a bad way to spend some time in the Power Rangers universe. I give the Power Rangers for Super Nintendo a 6 out of 10. There was a boatload of Power Rangers games that were released back in the day, and I have quite a few of them. Perhaps one day we'll get to these as well. I want to thank you guys for watching. If you hated this video, please hit like, please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Race Drivin was originally an arcade game, and from what I can tell, it actually wasn't too bad. And then there's the Super Nintendo version. Where do I begin? The game starts up and you have the option between 4 cars. Alright, Sportster Auto, Sportster Man. Okay, perfect. So what the f are these cars? Well, according to the instruction booklet, they're also manual. So only one of them is automatic. We'll go with that one. Then you have the option between 3 courses. So that's it. 4 cars, 3 courses, 2 frames per second. And that's the whole game. This game is very small. Let me just check something here. I think this game lied to us. Like I said before, it's a slideshow. You chug along at a snail's pace, the frame rate is like 5 frames per second, and believe it or not, but it gets worse. When you're in the presence of other cars, it drops to like 1 frame per second. The first time I played this as a kid, seconds after the first race began, I shut this crap off. But as a reviewer, I forced myself to continue. As it turns out, in this game, you don't race against other cars. Instead, you race against yourself while trying to score as many points as you can. So yeah, this is only a 1-player game. You race against yourself until you run out of time or fuel. As I was playing this, I became curious to the meaning of these lights down here. Oil, amp, temp, belt. But I was confused and concerned. Is this something I need to worry about? Because the game doesn't tell you anything. So I turn to the manual, and I read this thing front to back, and it says nothing about them other than the fuel light. So I guess they're just for show? I couldn't help but laugh my scrot off at this. We wish to thank you for purchasing Race Drivin for play on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. We hope you enjoy many hours of incredible thrills and exciting action as you take 4 of the fastest cars ever built across 3 wild and daring tracks. Fastest cars ever built. Yeah. I noticed that we have a rear view mirror. That's actually kind of a nice touch. Check this out. We just passed a transport truck, and in the mirror, it shows a red sports car. Yeah. Also, what's this about? What? I didn't hit anything. And these replays take forever, but at least you can skip them. So yeah, the gameplay licks. How about the controls and music? Controls are shit, as you could imagine. The music is, well, just listen. Yeah, that's nice and shitty. In-game, there's no music at all. I guess they figured we'd be too engrossed in hours of incredible thrills and exciting action to even notice the music, though they do play some hot garbage during the replays. So does this game have any redeeming qualities? Well, I do kinda like the backgrounds, the mountains and the nighttime cityscape, but otherwise, no. So that's Race Drivin for the Super Nintendo. It's not only bad, but it's damn well near unplayable. The terrible frame rate and lack of content makes this game a definite stay away. I give Race Drivin for the Super Nintendo a 2 out of 10. What are some other awful racing games? I think this might be the worst. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please hit subscribe and we'll see you in the next video.
Rock and Roll Racing was developed by a company called Silicon and Synapse, who is now known as Blizzard Entertainment, and this game was published by Interplay Productions. Rock and Roll Racing is an isometric racing game with an emphasis on rock and roll and high-octane action. When you start a new game, you have the option to choose whichever driver you want, and they each have different stats. As you complete races, you'll earn money which can be used to buy upgrades and new vehicles. Each car is a little different, but common upgradable parts are the engine, the tires, the armor, and the number of missiles, among other things. A nice touch with Rock and Roll Racing is that you can choose the color of the vehicle before you buy it. Rock and Roll Racing has a space theme where you travel to different planets while competing against different, well, I guess races of creatures. The way that Rock and Roll Racing works is that each planet has 2 divisions, and to move on to the next division or planet, you'll have to earn a certain score. For example, in this planet, we're in Division B, and we need to earn 1,400 points within 8 races before we advance. As you win races, along with earning money, you'll earn score points too. How many points you earn will depend on how you did in the race, which of course is also how the money works. If you've completed all the races but still don't have enough points, you'll have to start back at 0 points. I prefer the way Rock and Roll Racing handles this as opposed to a game like Micro Machines, where if you run out of lives, you get a game over and have to start the game all over again from the beginning. In Rock and Roll Racing, you'll still keep all the money you've earned and stay on the same planet you were on. You just need to start the division again from 0 points. Each planet looks vastly different from one another, which is nice. But in later planets, and because of the high point requirement to advance, you'll be there a long time, which means you'll be seeing the same environments for many races in a row. The environments only change when you change planets, so every race in the first planet will look like this, for example. Of course, all the tracks are laid out differently, but it can start to feel boring if you play long enough. Another thing that can start to wear on you is the audio, both Larry the announcer and the music. At first glance, Larry is a wicked commentator, and his quirky personality really helps to make this game stand out. The music is also fantastic because they're real songs. We have Bad to the Bone by George Thorogood and the Destroyers, Highway Star by Deep Purple, Paranoid by Black Sabbath, Peter Gunn by Henry Mancini, and last and certainly least, Born to be Wild by Steppenwolf. Like I said, at first glance, this game's audio, how can you beat that? But for me, I got real sick of hearing Larry's stupid voice. Ouch! And on top of that, I started to get sick of the game's music too. There are only 5 songs, and I hate Born to be Wild. It reminds me of that piece of shit movie Wild America starring Jonathan Taylor Thomas. I still remember seeing the stupid trailer on TV. I fucking hate that. How many movies or TV shows or commercials have you heard the song Born to be Wild? It seems to be everywhere. Born to be wild. We're wild, man. We're wild. This song is wild. This wild. Like, fuck off. I fucking like. It's like Rock You Like a Hurricane. How many fucking movies and commercials is that stupid song in? Like, I fucking hate music, man. I hate music. I love music, and I hate music. Like, I have this weird love-hate thing. Like, most mainstream music, not all of it, but most of it, I fucking hate. I fucking hate, I don't even hate Steppenwolf, but I hate that song. It's so shitty. Music is a weird thing with me. I get fired up with music, and I'm so sick of Born to Be Wild. I'm so sick of seeing it on TV, in movies, on commercials, in movie trailers. I mean, I know there's at least one other person out there who agrees with me. Anyway, what was I saying? Was I reviewing a video game or something? Micro Machines? I have no idea what I was doing. I got so upset about music that I just, And have you also noticed that, like, so much music right now is, like, electronic, and, like, all the lyrics are so shit? I'm in love with your body. I'm in love with your body. I fucking hate you, but your body? But I hate you. But your body? That's good stuff. I'm shallow. I'm shallow. I didn't even write this song. A bunch of guys in that big building over there, executives, they wrote all my songs. And people fucking buy it. I can't believe the shit that people listen to. I can't believe it. And anyway, back to the review. Sorry. Anyway, when I hear Born to Be Wild, all I can see in my head is this face. You're welcome. So, when I play rock and roll racing, I usually turn off both the music and Larry. I really like that they added the option to turn those things off, but you know what? By doing that, it makes rock and roll racing feel more like bumper cars rather than high-octane carnage, yeah! Another funny thing, Larry calls the start of the race, but if you turn him off, there's no other cue at all. What a piece of shit. Now, those issues I just mentioned are really quite minor, but one problem that I found to be pervasive is this game's isometric angle. See, it's often pretty tough to angle your car properly. So often, I would think that my car is straight and properly aligned, but it turns out I'm just slightly too far to a different direction. It was really annoying, especially when jumping ramps or driving over bumps. I would often fly off the track, and that usually meant that I would lose the race. I can handle if that only happened a few times, but it happened so often that I really started to get burnt out with this game. Now, I know I just shit all over this game, but please, this game really is good. I really do like rock and roll racing. The graphics are good, the music is good, besides Born to Be Wild. Oh, I hate that song. Music, when you hear, no, stop. I gotta focus on the review. But no, everything is good though. This game is fun. I really enjoy playing it. If you're a Super Nintendo collector, I highly recommend you find this game and add it to your collection, if you don't mind spending a bit of cash. Right now, it's sitting at about $65 Canadian. Fuck me. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. What is your favorite Super Nintendo racing game? Leave it down in the comments and I'll catch you guys next time. Shadowrun started off as a tabletop pen and paper RPG that was released in 1989. Since then, it's become a franchise spawning many different books and video games, among other things. Today, I'm reviewing the first of many games. Shadowrun was developed by Beam Software and published by Data East for the Super Nintendo in 1993. Loosely based off the novel, Never Deal with the Dragon, Shadowrun takes place in Seattle, Washington in the year 2050. The story opens with your character, Jake Armitage, getting gunned down in the open street. At this point, the reason is unclear. A mysterious fox lady shows up at the right time and casts a spell on you. Instead of dying, you come back to life, but with amnesia. Your journey begins in the morgue just before you scare the shit out of the morgue guys. Your goal is to figure out who you are, who did this to you, and why. Shadowrun is a cyberpunk isometric action RPG with some point-and-click elements. To interact with your environment, you press B to bring up a cursor, then you point and click on what you want to interact with. Both combat and magic work virtually the same way. Now, I've actually heard people complain about the controls in this game. I think some people feel that pointing and clicking on things can feel cumbersome. For instance, you press B for the cursor, then click on the door, then select Open. Yes, I can understand that complaint, but the people who made this game had the foresight to program the L and R buttons. This makes everything easy. Just press R to show the cursor, then press R on the door to open. If you want to examine an object, press L instead. It's really easy. I think the controls work great. You can equip guns, armor, and later on, spells. Enemies drop Nuyen, which is this game's currency. When talking to NPCs, often you'll see words in bold. These are keywords. They're added to a list from which you can ask about when talking to NPCs. This is important because it's how you advance the story. Later in the game, you gain the ability to hack computers, and this is referred to as decking. The style of gameplay changes as you enter cyberspace. Decking is sometimes required to advance the story, but it's also a great way to earn cash. Enemies typically drop a very small amount of Nuyen, and if you're saving up for that assault cannon,
well, decking is the faster option. As you explore Seattle, you'll be defending yourself against what seems like an endless supply of hired goons. You'll encounter them anywhere and everywhere. It's not just the hired goons who you need to watch out for. The streets of Seattle are also home to quite a few, shall I say, supernatural creatures. Eventually, you'll be attacked by ghouls. Be warned though, they're fast. It is worth it, however, as ghoul busting is a great way to earn karma. Karma can be spent to level up Jake. At the beginning of the game, I recommend focusing on body, which increases your HP, and firearms, which increases your accuracy. Combat works well, for the most part. You just pull out your gun, aim, and shoot. You can sometimes use your environment to your advantage. For example, you can take cover behind certain objects or structures. Depending on where you hide, this could take you out of their line of sight. In this example, I hid behind the dumpster and this Nobel Prize winner couldn't see me, so I just shot him. As you can see, it works well, but there are a few enemies who move way too fast, and as a result, shooting them can be tricky. I promise though, this is very uncommon. To aid in combat, you're able to hire people into your party. These people are Shadowrunners. There are many different Shadowrunners you can hire. If you want strong firepower, hire a mercenary. If you need someone to help you into the Matrix, hire a decker. You get the idea. These party members are temporary, though the length of time they spend with you depends on your leadership skill. I'll mention that you can also give your own weapons and armor to your hired Shadowrunners in case you don't like their default equipment. I think Shadowrun has great atmosphere, and this is mostly thanks to the graphics, the music, the story, and the writing. Even just talking to some random loser with this somber music makes this hopeless metropolitan shithole seem like a place that I'd love to spend an afternoon. Like, I would hate to be there in real life, but this game makes me think that I'd like to be there in real life. That's how well they nailed the atmosphere. Here's kind of a stupid story. When I was in college, right before class, I was in the hallway, and I'm like fantasizing about Shadowrun, and then I just looked at my buddy and I was like, I want to move to Seattle and hang out with street scum. And he fucking laughed his ass off. But I wasn't trying to be funny, so that's how well I think they nailed the atmosphere. Just check out the music, it's so good. Now, while I do love this game, I admit that for first-time players, it can be a little intimidating. Shadowrun does not hold your hand. On my first playthrough, I often got stuck because I didn't know who to talk to or what to ask them. It can be easy to miss out on a particular keyword because you didn't ask about the right topic. Also early on, it's easy to get killed. If you're new to this game, you might not know the designated spots where enemies have a chance to appear. For example, I know that it's possible a sniper will be in this window. If it's closed, I'm fine. If it's open, there is sure to be a hired goon. So if I'm low on health or just don't feel like fighting, I'll leave the screen and come back. I'll do this until he's gone. The neat thing with Shadowrun is that every time I play it a little differently. For example, you don't need to hire Shadowrunners, but you can. You don't need to use magic, but you can. Heck, if you want to make this game even harder, you can sell your first gun before you talk to Glutman, and when you're taken to the car yards, they'll give you the zip gun, which is the worst gun in the game. So that's Shadowrun. I absolutely love this game. Everything about it. The graphics, the music, the atmosphere. I often return to this game and play it. Probably at least once a year. It's easily within my top 10 Super Nintendo games, and for that, I give Shadowrun a 9 out of 10. I hate to say it, but despite owning the Genesis version, I've never played it. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe. and I'll see you in the next video. Soul Blazer was developed by Quintet and published by Enix for the Super Nintendo in 1992 and is a part of the so-called Quintet trilogy along with Illusion of Gaia and Terranigma, which sadly wasn't released in North America. Soul Blazer is a top-down action RPG where you take control of Blazer and your goal is to free the land and defeat Death Toll. You start off in a small, empty village, and the only place left to go is an underground dungeon. As you start to kill enemies, they'll reveal monster layers, and by stepping on them, you'll release something or someone back to the empty village. And this is the bulk of the gameplay here. In every area of the game, this is what you do. It's not bad at all, in fact I rather enjoy it, but if you were hoping for a little something more, then you might be disappointed. Soul Blazer is not a story-heavy game. Yes, we have characters, yes, we have a plot, but it just kind of feels tacked on or just kind of there. Again, not a bad thing at all, it just comes down to preference. Maybe you don't want a story-heavy game. But like I said, it is an RPG, which means you'll be gaining experience and leveling up as you kill enemies. Upon leveling up, you'll get an increase in HP, attack, defense, and you'll be able to equip stronger weapons and armor. While killing enemies, sometimes they'll drop golden gems, which are used to cast magic. If you run out of gems, you run out of magic. Also, if you die, you'll respawn with 0 gems. Soul Blazer has a vast assortment of environments to explore, like the Grass Valley, the seabed, or the mini-town models, just to name a few. There are 7 different areas that you must clear, and you can only move on to the next by defeating the boss of your current area. I admit that the gameplay can start to feel a little repetitive. This is because the game is light on story, and the majority of your time will be spent fighting enemies, and unfortunately the combat is kind of dull, but thankfully the variety and locations can help to alleviate the repetition. You can find different swords, armors, magic, and items. Be on the lookout though, because some equipment can be missed. You can return to previous areas to search for items you weren't able to get before. For example, in the first few areas, there are enemies that you can't kill. Later on, when you get a better sword, you can return to those areas, kill the monsters, and unlock the stuff you missed. This happens quite a few times, but I like this design because it gives a reason to return to previous areas and also helps to break up the monotony. The graphics are okay, nothing special, but certainly not bad. You can tell that this is an early Super Nintendo game. While some music tracks are great, some are just forgettable. I really enjoy the music that plays while you're in town, but some of the dungeon music is just okay. The controls are, nothing special, just they're good. They're fine, nothing wrong with them. B is the sword and Y is magic. You can press L or R to do what the game calls a crab walk, which allows you to face a certain direction while walking in another. Also, while crab walking, you'll hold your sword out, which causes constant but weaker damage. This can be a good strategy depending on the situation. Soul Blazer is not a hard game. The only time I had any difficulty was with certain bosses. The trick is just learning their pattern, and once you've done that, you're on easy street. So that's Soul Blazer. It's not story heavy nor very exciting. It can be a little dull at times, but if you just want to turn your brain off and listen to a podcast or whatever, this game might be for you. Overall, I give Soul Blazer a 7 out of 10. So have you guys played Soul Blazer, and what's your opinion of it? Guys, thank you so much. If you liked this video, give it a like, and I'll see you next week.
Back in the day, the NES was home to the Adventure Island trilogy. The first Adventure Island was practically just a copy of Sega's Wonder Boy. After the release of Adventure Island, Nintendo and Hudson Soft began to experiment with new gameplay ideas to ensure the sequel would be a more engaging and exciting experience for players. With the addition of animal buddies, an inventory system, and a beautiful world map packed full of new locations, Adventure Island 2 did not disappoint. About a year after the release of Adventure Island 2, Super Adventure Island was released for the Super Nintendo. The graphics and the music were a huge improvement over the NES games, as expected. But what was unexpected is that, in terms of gameplay, Super Adventure Island feels more like a step back from what they had achieved in Adventure Island 2. Gone are the animal buddies, the inventory, and the world map. In this sense, Super Adventure Island appears to be more like a remake or retelling of the first game rather than a true 16-bit sequel. However, if you enjoyed the first Adventure Island, you'll probably enjoy Super Adventure Island as well. It's just more of the same but with better music and visuals. Now, if you happen to be unfamiliar, Super Adventure Island is an action platformer where you take control of Master Higgins as you play through several island-themed levels on a quest to save your girlfriend. Super Adventure Island does a good job at mixing up the variety of the locations you visit. My favorite is the Misty Forest stage. The levels all have a decent length, and occasionally you'll face off against different bosses. There are 2 weapons you'll find on your journey, the Tomahawk and the boomerang. You can power up the weapon you have by collecting more of the same weapon. Sometimes, though not often, you'll come across a skateboard power-up that allows you to move faster as well as take an extra hit before you die. Now, I'm not complaining, but I always thought this franchise seemed so random. Almost as if Hudson Soft just put a bunch of words into a hat and by luck drew out what this game would be.
Alright guys, I hate to bring you into the boardroom like this, but the boss has really been riding me about this next video game, so we gotta knock this one out the park, alright? So what I need you to do is write down your best, most creative ideas. We're gonna put them in this hat, we're gonna stir it up, and then we're gonna read them, and I'm gonna tell you what the next game is gonna be. Are you ready? Don't you let Hudson Soft down, Higgins. You screwed us on that last one with your terrible ideas already. All right, go ahead, put it in the hat. Put it in the hat. Let's see what we got. All right, thank you, sir, thank you. All right, let's mix up the hat here. All right, the first. Okay, I can see you guys are thinking hard about this one. We got island, okay? It's gonna take place on an island. You gotta throwing that out. Next one. All right, okay, oh, man. Don't burn your brain cells out. You got skateboard here, all right? You got to think about something with a skateboard or whatever. Let's see what's happening next. Oh, Higgins, I can tell this was your idea. Tomahawk, okay? So listen, we got an adventure somewhere on an island with a guy riding a skateboard, and maybe he has like a tomahawk for a weapon. All right, now go make this game and knock it out of the park for me.
See, I told y'all. I knew it. Although Adventure Island looks and sounds great, there are some negatives I would like to touch on. The biggest issue, in my opinion, is that this game is boring as fuck. I'll just say it, this game's fucking boring. The level layouts are really bland. Not quite something I'd expect from a game called Super Adventure Island. I guess I didn't really know what I expected, certainly not skateboarding on sand while throwing tomahawks. But the levels drag on for longer than they should, and there really isn't much going on. Just go to the right and hope you don't get hit. Speaking of which, one hit and you're dead. Ugh, you know, I hate when games do that. At least with Contra, you jumped right back into where you were. But not in this game. When you die, you go back to the beginning of the stage. Ugh, this is really tedious, especially if you were at the end of a level. Boss levels are a real pain in the ass too. Bosses are not exactly hard, but there's a good chance you'll take a hit while you're trying to figure out what to do. And guess what? If you die on a boss stage, they make you go back to the beginning of the previous stage. What's up with that? The weapons can also be pretty annoying. For example, I much prefer the boomerang over the tomahawk, but there are times where this game really seems to want you to take the tomahawk. Like right here, I don't want that, but it looks like I don't have much of a choice, so I guess I'm taking it. Okay, so this is just a me thing, but I really don't like Master Higgins. I just think he looks like a doofus with his lips all puckered up while he runs on the spot and his stupid hat. I don't know, I'm just not a fan. He's not as bad as Chuck Rock, but still. All in all, Super Adventure Island is not a bad game. It's a nice looking but simple platformer with really good music. The gameplay leaves a lot to be desired and ultimately is kind of boring. I'm not too sure why they didn't continue to build on top of what Adventure Island 2 had started. Instead, they went back to the basics, which I think is a huge mistake. Opportunity. To answer a question the NES Complex might ask, is it fun? No. But just because I don't find it fun doesn't mean that you won't. Super Adventure Island isn't a rare nor expensive game, and if you find it out in the wild, I would consider picking it up. You won't be blown away by any means, but maybe you'll find more enjoyment than I did. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching, and thank you Jay, the NES Addict, for helping me with this video. Please check out his channel if you haven't already. Please make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as that bell notification, and we will see you guys next time.
Super Ghouls and Ghosts is a puzzle platformer that was released for Super Nintendo in North America on November 28th, 1991, roughly 3 months after the Super Nintendo launched. In Super Ghouls and Ghosts, you traverse 7 levels, all with different themes. Each level is split into 2 stages. Along the way, you can upgrade your armor, pick up different weapons, find 1-ups, and collect various items like statues or gold, both of which just give you points. I mentioned that this is a puzzle platformer. What does that actually mean? Every enemy and obstacle has an optimal way for you to handle it. Each weapon behaves in a specific way, and it's up to you to figure out how to deal with each enemy and obstacle and which weapon is best for each scenario. You also have to plan your jumps. You can jump and double jump, but once you jump, you're locked in, so make sure it's a good one. If you don't handle the situation properly, it's likely to result in you taking damage or dying. You could say that most of this game is trial and error. With this being the case, naturally the game is going to be pretty challenging. Don't be discouraged though, because I don't think this game is as hard as people say. Once you understand how the game works, you'll notice that the levels just kind of fly by. There are 8 total weapons, and each function differently, and ultimately, certain weapons are better for certain situations, although it's possible to beat any part of this game with any weapon. Each weapon, minus the Goddess Bracelet, has an enhanced version. The 2 weapons that I found to be the most useful are the dagger and the crossbow. Both of these can be shot rapidly, but the crossbow is perfect for killing enemies who are above you. I mean, this is just me though. I mean, you might really like the lance, for example. Throughout the stages, there are hidden chests. To reveal them, you need to touch a specific part of the level. Chests often contain weapons and armor, but sometimes they contain traps or the conjurer. If it's the conjurer, kill him fast or he might make life worse for a short time. There are 3 tiers of armor: the steel, the bronze, and the golden. Sadly, all armor only protects you from damage once, so no matter which armor you have, upon taking damage, you'll lose it completely and return to your shit-stained underwear. Well, there is one exception. The golden armor comes with a shield, the moon shield to be exact, so you can block 1 incoming projectile, but only 1. That is, unless you upgrade to the sun shield, then you can block up to 3 projectiles. So what's the point on upgrading your armor if it doesn't actually offer better protection? Well, in this game, better armor means better offense, not better defense. Huh. Okay, so if I want better weapons, put on better armor. Armor? What? Yeah, I don't get it. See, in this game, upgrading armor allows you to use enhanced weapons and magic. The bronze armor allows you to use enhanced weapons, and upgrading to the golden armor allows you to then also use magic. If you upgrade from the moon shield to the sun shield, you'll actually be able to charge magic even faster. Okay, so that's the game objectively speaking, so what do I like and not like about it? Well, I'll start off with the things that I do like. I think that the music and the graphics are fantastic, especially being that this is a really early Super Nintendo game. I really enjoy the look and the atmosphere of each level. From the haunted graveyard to the frozen hills, it all looks awesome. I think the enemies are great too. Each level has unique monsters and there's always something new to see. You know, for this game being pretty tough, the bosses are surprisingly easy. For a game that bends you over almost 100% of the time, it's refreshing that the bosses go easy on you. It's also very satisfying when you figure out good strategies and are able to progress through the game. Now, for what I don't really like. It's really annoying if you accidentally pick up a weapon you don't want. The only thing you can do is continue to play and hope that your favorite weapon drops sooner than later. Sometimes the level can get pretty busy, and as a result, the frame rate sometimes takes a dip, though it's not enough to ruin the experience. Alright, for this last thing, I don't even know where to begin, so I guess fasten your seatbelt. Now, we all know this game does that thing where they make you beat it twice to actually beat it. Yeah, I think it's stupid. It just makes the first playthrough feel like a waste. They also make you beat the final boss with a weapon called the Goddess Bracelet. So here's the thing. When you play through the game on your first playthrough, you can't get the Goddess Bracelet. So you're going to be playing the game, and you're going to be practicing this game. When you first start this game, you're going to be dying a lot, and you're going to be trying to figure out strategies to get through the levels, and you're going to figure out which weapons you like the most, and you're going to try to pick those weapons up throughout your first playthrough of the game, but then the game makes you beat it a second time. So what you're going to do is you're going to pretty much do the same thing you did on your first playthrough, except for you need to beat the final boss with a weapon called the Goddess Bracelet. If you're anything like me, you didn't really use the Goddess Bracelet. You didn't practice with this weapon, so finally you get to the last stage, and you need to use the Goddess Bracelet, but you don't really know how to use it. I mean, you can throw it, but you're not very good at it. You're used to something else. Like I was used to the dagger and the arrows. So this really throws everything off, and it makes the last level way too fucking hard. Like, I was playing it just tonight. In fact, I still have it on. And I really enjoy this game, but on the very last level, the one where you actually need to use the Goddess Bracelet, it is so fucking hard. Like, how many times can you die and have to redo the whole fucking level? Because you get to the boss, you have to fight him with the Goddess Bracelet, and it's tough. You're not, again, you don't really know how to use it, and if you die, which you're going to, 2 fucking hits and you're dead, and that's provided you didn't make any mistakes on the way to the boss, you die and you have to repeat the whole level over again. Like, I played for like 2 hours on just the final stage, and I couldn't fucking beat the last boss. Not even the last boss, the second last boss. Oh, and these guys can go fuck themselves. I hate them. You ever noticed that they can just fly through everything, fly through solid objects, fly through the ground? Doesn't matter. You can't, but they can. Have fun. They follow you too. I fucking hate these guys. So that's Super Ghouls and Ghosts. It's a good game. There are some flaws, some pretty glaring flaws, but overall I give Super Ghouls and Ghosts an 8 out of 10. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. I need to know, have you beat this game? Because I didn't. I gave up on it tonight. Fuck, I can't. I just got so fucking sick of playing the last stage. Like, I'm probably on my 50th playthrough of the final stage. Man, speedrunners just download a fucking ROM, and once they get to the part that they need to, they save state and they just practice. They don't have to fucking deal with having to go through the whole fucking stage over and 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 over again. Gets a little tedious. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe and stuff. Bye.
Super Valis 4 was developed by Telenet and published by Atlas and released in North America for the Super Nintendo in 1993. Valis 4 was also on the PC Engine. You play as Lena as she fights against an army, I don't know the story. I don't know the story at all. I didn't care. I didn't even prepare for this review. You traverse 7 levels referred to as acts. Before embarking on your journey, you have access to the options menu, which allows you to change the difficulty between normal and hard, as well as change the controls. There's also an easy difficulty, but you can only access that by using a cheat code. So yeah, easy in this game is a cheat. Your primary weapon is a sword. You have a fireball projectile that has unlimited use. Throughout the game, you'll collect other various spells, but their use is finite. To use your spells, press up plus the attack button. You can jump, and by double tapping forward, you may run. It's pretty simple stuff here, it's nothing too deep. Luckily, the controls do feel responsive. When it comes to graphics, I think this game is satisfactory. It's nothing special, it's no Yoshi's Island or Donkey Kong Country, but they're okay. One thing I like is that quite a few of the backgrounds I think are nice to look at. I mean, they're not exactly exciting, but I still find them nice. I mean, I could relax here with a nice book, have some tea, maybe even take a little nap. I mean, maybe not with like the enemies around. I mean, you know what I mean. The in-game sprites, not bad. Again, nothing special, but I find them to be more forgettable than the backgrounds. When it comes to the music, this is easily the best thing that this game has going for it. I really enjoy the music in this game. Just take a listen. Alright, time for gameplay, and unfortunately this is where this game really falls apart. Most levels are just a matter of running to the right. I mean, most times. Some levels you'll be going up and you'll be going left, but for the most part I feel like you go right. You know, with that being said, the levels usually do have some more for you to explore. It's not just about going right, but you know, there are platforms and areas that you can kind of go up and explore, and sometimes throughout a level there'll be like a fork in the road, and you can choose which way to go. Like for example here, I decided to go this way, but it led to a gap that I couldn't jump. So then I fall back down here, and I have to run to the right just to choose to go up. It led nowhere, it was a dead end. So sometimes exploring will lead to a dead end, but on other times it'll lead to finding more spells. But it's not really that exciting either. Sometimes you'll run into sections where there are no enemies, and there's no platforming, it's just empty space that you run through. Like, what up with that? Here's a section where there are enemies, but no platforming, it's just a straight runway. So you just run to the right and jump over the enemies, because why bother fighting them? If you die, you start back at the beginning of the level, so that's kinda tedious because this game is hard. Which is weird because there are so many areas where there are no enemies and no stage hazards. Because this game starts you at the beginning of a level when you die, I feel like it kind of discourages exploration. When you explore parts of the level, you'll either find nothing or power-ups, but you'll likely take damage from enemies, so by the time you get to the boss, there's a chance you'll have much less health than you may need. So to make the levels easier, just skip everything, go straight to the boss, and hopefully you survive with the energy you've saved. And this brings me to another issue I have with the game. The difficulty. I find this game hard for the wrong reasons. Like, how is a game with empty spaces and no stage hazards difficult? Well, for one, you can't block. Like, it would be nice to have a button dedicated to blocking. Sometimes enemies quickly appear from off screen and hit you. See? A block button would be nice.
But even then, some enemies fly in way too fast. And that is cheap. Enemies do a lot of damage. Now, to be fair, I am playing on normal, not easy, but you can see that if you had a block button, it wouldn't be as big of an issue. Now, check this part out. I was blown away. These enemies here are only vulnerable to the homing missile. So I shoot the homing missile, and it keeps trying to attack the enemy above. The enemy off screen. So it kills neither of them. Like, what? What happened? Check this out. If you have a spell selected, and then you select a different spell, you lose the first spell you had selected. So you have to plan your spells out carefully. Which isn't fun. Boss 3 sucks. She changes forms 3 times, which is, like, kind of cool, in theory. But this fight is just so long and drawn out. It's boring. Kind of like the rest of the game. So I guess in that sense, it flows well, because it's boring like the rest of it, so maybe they intended for it to be boring as shit. I'll show you how to cheese the level 2 boss. You can stand right here, and he won't cause contact damage to you, so just stand there and shoot him. Make sure you jump his attack so when he's on the other side of the screen, but, you know, you can just stand there and shoot him. So this game is tough, and I realize that you need to take it slow, which in itself is hard to do because A, you can run, B, you're gonna want to run because there are so many areas where there's just nothing going on, enemies that you can just jump over, areas where there's just huge open spaces of nothing, and C, when you die, you go back to the beginning of the level, so then naturally you become in a hurry to get back to where you were because you feel like this game's wasting your time. But don't run. At least don't run for very long. So that's Super Valis 4. The music is great, it's okay looking, but the level design and the difficulty make it kind of hard to recommend. But even still, it's far from the worst Super Nintendo game. I give Super Valis 4 a 5 out of 10. Now the way that I look at my score here is 5 is right in the middle of the road. It's not good, it's not bad, it's meh. Maybe this game is up your alley, and if it looks good to you, try it out. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. The Great Circus Mystery starring Mickey and Minnie was developed by Capcom and released in 1994 for the Super Nintendo and is a sequel to the Magical Quest. The Great Circus Mystery starring Mickey and Minnie was also released on Sega Genesis and Game Boy Advance. In this review, instead of constantly referring to this game as The Great Circus Mystery starring Mickey and Minnie, I'm just going to call it Circus Mystery. Cool? Alright, let's get started. The Great Circus Mystery opens with a cutscene to explain the story. Basically, Mickey and Minnie get to the circus, everyone's gone, and they want to figure out what happened and who's responsible. I noticed that Mickey and Minnie don't even live together. Much like the first game, The Magical Quest, this is an action platformer. Before you begin, you're able to choose your difficulty between easy, normal, and hard. There are a total of 6 levels, and again you're treated with another beautiful map screen. I have to say, I think I like this map screen even more than in the first game. This one even has the Northern Lights. Steamed hams, anyone? The levels in this game are great. They're fun to play through, and we have quite the variety between a haunted circus, a jungle, a haunted house, caves, the Token Ice level, and finally the Baron's Castle. I'd also like to point out that I really enjoy the emphasis on the supernatural, being that we have 2 haunted levels. Also like the first game, here you unlock different outfits, all which have unique abilities. We have the Sweeper outfit, which you can use to vacuum up blocks, coins, and enemies. Next we have the Safari outfit, which you can use to climb up walls and cling onto hooks, branches, and whatever else you can find. Finally, you'll unlock the Western Wear outfit. This suit gives you a gun and forces you to ride a horse, which hops constantly. This suit is good, it just takes a little while to get used to. All these outfits are great, and you'll be switching between them quite a bit during your playthrough. There's also a number of things you'll collect, such as coins, which, like the first game, can be spent at the general store. You'll find apples and grapes, which add to your point value, 200 and 500 respectively. Hearts, heart containers, 1-ups, and items to restore energy to your vacuum and gun. As you can see, this game is much like the first game, though there are some noticeable improvements. First off, this game is 2-player co-op. As the title suggests, you play as Mickey and/or Minnie. That alone adds a ton of replay value. This game also features a password backup, so you don't have to beat the whole thing in one sitting. Finally, when you die, you respawn immediately, unless you get a game over. In the Magical Quest, when you die, you start at the last checkpoint. In the Circus Mystery, you pop right back. It's similar to how most beat-em-ups work. So how about flaws? Does this game have any flaws? Well, maybe, depending on how you see it. The problem I have with this game are the suits. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the suits in this game. In some ways, they're much more useful and really add to the gameplay, but in other ways, they're also more cumbersome, which can make this game feel tedious. On the plus side, these suits add to gameplay because they're all very different and used in very different ways. They change the mechanics of the game, such as climbing walls, sucking enemies, and shooting your gun. In the magical quest, the magic and fireman suit had their own purpose, sure, but were otherwise very similar. In the circus mystery, the suits are all completely different, and that's a good thing. On the negative side, you might grow tired from switching between the suits so much. It doesn't take long to switch between suits, maybe about 2 seconds, but when you've done it for like the 40th time, you'll just wish that you had one suit, and your new abilities were added to your one suit so you can just do everything without having to change your clothes. Really, at the end of the day, this is not a big deal. So those are your suits. I really like how they add to gameplay, they're fun to use, but the constant need to switch between them can at times make this game feel like a slog. But maybe that's just me. That's really just a small nitpick at a game that, in the end, does a lot right. So that's it. It's a great game. If you like the magical quest, you'll probably like this game too. The levels are fun, the suits are neat, and you can play it with your dad. I give the Circus Mystery an 8 out of 10. There's also a third game in the series that we'll review at some point. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe and let me know if you've played this game, and if you have, did you like it? The story follows Mickey as he attempts to save Pluto from Pete. Upon turning the power on, you'll notice that there's an options menu where you can adjust the difficulty to easy, normal, or hard, as well as change the controls. You'll also notice that there's a 2-player mode. Unfortunately, it's 2-player alternating, and when I was a kid I thought for sure player 2 would be Minnie. Nope. But if you get the Game Boy Advance version, you can actually play as Minnie. When you start a new game, you'll see an overworld map. Now, I love overworld maps. I don't know what it is. I just love the look of them. And you'll see that there are 6 levels in total. The first level is called the Treetops. Now, moments after you begin this, you'll come to a barn. Once inside, you'll get filled in, and this guy casually tells you that your dog was stolen by Pete. Like, I always thought it was so funny how casually he just tells you, oh yeah, your dog's stolen. Have fun with that. Like, I actually picture him out doing his grocery shopping, and he sees Pete take Mickey's dog for no reason, and he looks and he's just like, yeah, that's a dog theft. The cheese is on sale. Like, yeah, your dog's stolen. Have fun. This level is pretty neat. You can grab these tomatoes and do this, and then you can grab onto them and fly up. This level isn't very difficult, and in fact this whole game isn't very difficult. In some levels there are mini-bosses, like this guy, who I always thought resembled Beastly from Care Bears. You just jump on his head or throw his buddies at him. I always thought this was kind of odd. When you're coming down the ramp on the tomato, if you jump up here, you'll actually find a store with nothing for sale. Like, why? I always wondered that, and maybe someone can tell me why, but anytime I play this game, I run into the store and there's always nothing for sale. Now, I never have enough money to buy anything, but the point is still there. Why is there a store here? I mean, am I missing something? Throughout all the levels in this game, there's always stuff to find, whether it be money, heart containers, fruit, Mickey dolls, or stores. Some of these are out in the open, but some of them are pretty well hidden. So you continue through level 1, and you get to this part where there's a dam, and there's a beaver down here. Now here's a little trick you can do next time you play this game. Just throw a block at this guy's face, and then swim through his dam. You'll get a 2-up. Pretty cool. Eventually you get to the boss, which is a huge snake, and I find it so much fun to fight this guy. You can take these blocks and throw them right in the center of his face, and you can even take parts of his tail and throw them at his face. It's just a lot of fun. Stage 2 is the Haunted Forest. At the beginning of Stage 2, the ghosts will appear and give you your first suit. This suit allows you to shoot magic as well as breathe underwater. So again, you're going to go through this level while avoiding enemies. Watch out for these fish though, they're a one-shot kill. There's a part where you have to swim through a tree, and I find the sound of the sap percolating oddly satisfying. Once out of the tree, here's a little secret. If you jump down here and fall, there's a store. Now, I don't normally buy anything at this store, as I usually save my money for later on, but still pretty neat. Continue on and you eventually get to the boss, a big spider. This boss is tougher because you can fall down and die. You can shoot him in the face with magic, or if you get lucky and he faces up, you can just sit on his face. I'd sit on his face. I did, I sat on his face. After defeating the spider, you'll enter a What the f are they called? An elevator. After defeating the spider, you'll enter an elevator and go down. This level's called Fire Grotto, but I think we all know where he's going. So it starts off with an auto-scrolling section, we fight beasts again, and after that we get the fireman outfit, which is actually my favorite outfit. With it, you can put out some fires, as well as push certain blocks. Also, this level's music is awesome. There's a secret here where you're going to want to put on the magic outfit, swim down and get the heart container. Now there's a shop here, and when I play the game I usually like to buy the magic upgrade, so if I happen to have 300 coins I'll buy it here. But if I don't, I usually move on. Now you can actually farm coins here if you enter the shop, exit the shop, and you keep doing loops like this, you can farm coins. But I find it's usually not worth the time to sit here and farm, and I usually just wait until later to get the magic upgrade. Fire Grotto ends with the coolest boss fight. At least it's my favorite boss fight. Then we move on to Pete's Peak, a windy mountaintop. Another very cool level. You meet up with Goofy and he gives you the mountain climbing outfit. This outfit can be really fun to use, but this level can be kinda tricky because there are some tough jumps, there's wind, and spikes, amongst other obstacles. This level concludes with a boss fight against a big-ass bird. I use the grapple hook to steal his eggs and throw them back at him. Sometimes he'll fly past, and you'll need to hook onto these pegs so he doesn't blow you away. Next we have the Frozen Plains, and this is actually the level that I enjoy the least. It's just really short, it's not very hard at all, it's just a little bit slippery, and even then it's not a big deal. You'll just walk for a few seconds and then fight a boss which looks like Pete as a walrus. So just soak him and jump on his head. Finally we arrive at Pete's castle. Mickey is scared as the door slowly opens. And I always wondered, where the f***'s that door going? The door's like 20 feet tall, and there's only a few more feet above the door, so where's the door going? This level is okay, it's not my favorite. It's certainly the biggest and the hardest, and it tests most of the skills you've acquired up to this point. You'll need to use magic and water. So if I didn't buy the magic upgrade earlier, this is when I'll buy the magic upgrade. There's a store right down here, and I picked the magic upgraded because the magic actually does more damage than the water, which I find kind of a bummer because I enjoy the water more. I think the water is more fun to use. All the mini-bosses in the game are seen here in the castle, but if you know the layout, you can skip them all and go straight to Pete, which is what I do, like every time. Just use magic on him and he'll be dead in no time. So that's the Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse. I think this is a great game. It looks great, it sounds great, it's just a lot of fun to play. Now, when it comes to replay value, your mileage will vary. For me, I've been playing this game since I was 6, so a couple times a year I'll throw this game in and play it and have fun. But if you didn't grow up with this game, it might be a one and done for you. Because as far as replay value, objectively speaking, there's not much else to see on repeat playthroughs. I give the Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse a 7 out of 10. This game does have 2 sequels, The Great Circus Mystery and The Magical Quest 3. Now, we'll get to these games one day and see if they improved on the formula. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next review.